do not give financial, legal, medical or any kind of advice. Opinions are their own. This broadcast contains foul language and dangerous ideas. If you need a trigger warning, you are in the wrong place. Now enjoy the show.
Dear partners and friends of
What the fuck?
Forum, a very cordial welcome.
The WTF Forum is a decentralized broadcast network with no governing body of any kind, and is produced and distributed by a loosely affiliated, ever-growing network of rogue, independent content creators. This forum does not, will not, and shall not have any one location, feed, platform, or channel, but shall be shared and multiplied as nature dictates. If any listener of the following proceedings finds themselves offended, they will be asked kindly to go fuck themselves.
Welcome to the forum. Without the great Michael Whistler, author of Hey Duke 2029. Go check that out and find it at ittybitty.easypeasy.tips. But without Mike, we got a great cast of What the Fuckers, and I forgot to make that not repeat. Sorry, hold on, I'm fixing that. Everything's laggy right now. I'm on truck stop Wi-Fi, so everything wants to lag on me. But hopefully we can have a great show. Anyway, let's kick it into introductions, and I will pass it to our newest guest, Everyman. How you doing tonight, bud?
I'm doing really well, really well. Happy to be here. I'm just a guy, hence the name. So pass it to Stella.
Hey, always good to be here. I'm Stella Q from Union of the Unknowns and the occasional little stint on Propaganda Report. Over to you, Drew.
Drew Misson from Your Missing the Point podcast. Yeah, happy to be here. But Ando, why are we lagging so much? I thought America was a first world nation. I thought you'd be bathed in 5G radiation right now and everything be fantastic.
It's not that way in the Appalachian Mountains here, so yeah,
you heard wrong.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah, you're getting some Sasquatch interference then. And over to Rachel.
Hey, I'm Rachel D. Tobias on Twitter. Thanks for having me on, Andy. And you're only getting bad Wi-Fi because you said Appalachians instead of Appalachians or something. You said it with too many teeth.
All right.
Should have got an apple, Lando.
The Drizzle.
That's right. I am the Drizzle, host of Grand Theft World Liberty Radio, and I'm in the right spot, I think, because I'm just wondering what the hell's going on. But I'm checking out how to screen share. We'll see if I can understand it. I don't know. What do you think, Rose?
Hey everyone, I'm the Rose Pinochet on my 6,000,000th account. although the Kali Yuga's back, my original account has been restored, which probably explains all the interference.
Fido? Okay.
All right.
There's also,
I'm having some minor technical difficulties on my end. I guess that's just the night for it. I am Phytophiliac. You can hear my music on Bandcamp. It is phytophiliac.bandcamp.com, and it's available on major streaming platforms.
Awesome. Thanks, Fido. Let's kick it off. I was going to, I've asked around about the various ideas on topics tonight, and we've got a few, but Rachel has a really good one. Let's kick it off with that. What do you think?
Awesome. All right. So I was thinking a really good topic for people to mull over was family traditions. such as, things that come from your family? Is it something that you came up with? Is it something that you do with, a group of friends? And I know, we love going over our dystopian readings and everything, but I thought it'd just be kind of cute and nice and special to focus on something positive like that.
Well, I have been subject to the rootless kind of mind virus. I guess everybody that's probably Gen X and younger has been exposed to this terrible thing. And I don't think that I have anything that I would consider unique to my family. I just remember the coolest thing when we were young was going to the backyard and gathering up thousands of blackberries and making blackberry pie and blackberry cobbler and just a variety of things with blackberries because we had them in abundance in my yard back then. So I'm trying to think of some other things, but I haven't really come up with anything. Let's go back around the circle and start with Everyman. Have you any unique family traditions or just family traditions that stand out to you?
Wow. I didn't really give it any thought. Geez. I guess for us growing up, I mean, for my family, Christmas was always huge because that's what my dad wanted, and that just sadly is not really the case anymore. My dad passed away unexpectedly in 2014, and the way we kind of did Christmas went away with him. So sorry to be a bummer. I guess the other thing that comes to mind is something that we still do to this very day is we host euchre parties. Anybody in here know how to play euchre? You ever heard of the card game euchre? Show of hands, who knows how to play euchre?
Wow, I've heard of it. Yeah.
See, it's fucking weird. It's a weird cliche Midwest game. And we host a monthly party here at the house. My wife and I do. We still do that to this day. We kind of take the summer off a little bit because people are busy. But throughout the fall and all winter long and into the spring, we host a euchre party. So we've been doing that for years.
Okay. I guess I'm next. Sorry. Yeah, as traditions go, pretty much next to nothing. I can only go on memories, really. And obviously, I guess Christmas seems to come to mind as probably the most traditional thing in my family. It's sort of being in Australia, it never made a lot of sense to me that in the middle of summer, and it's usually a bloody hot day, the traditions of the old baked dinner seemed to stick around, which was very much the English traditions, which is, in England, it was generally probably snowing on Christmas Day and it was cold, and to have the oven going and all that was wonderful. But I just, as God bless her heart, my grandmother, she worked really hard for Christmas Day, and she'd be walking around, mopping the sweat off her face and her brow as she's over the hot oven with a big baked chook that she could hardly get out of the oven, 33, 35 degrees Celsius. So, again, God bless her. And, we'd sit around the beautiful table that generally we weren't really meant to sit around any other time of the year. Careful at the table. Don't scratch the table, but we actually got to sit around it. So, and I remember the spread, there was definitely a lovely, warm family thing, and often followed by an argument. So there was that. And I don't really practice Christmas myself, but I must admit, now that my nan's gone and we no longer do that, it is fond memories to look back on, but I don't continue them myself. I actually don't really celebrate Christmas at all, personally. It's just another day, because I don't believe it's really based around what it's actually presented as, but that's just me. And I don't deter anyone else from celebrating it. Drew?
Yeah. Similar to Stella, the traditions in my family are a bit skew-if because we live in Australia and my mum's a fresh off the boat Scot. So we grew up with a lot of Scottish traditions in our household. My dad's Australian from the farmers that first came out here on the Second Fleet. So he's got a lot of traditions that are built around type of like what you consider to be frontier type of life, hunting, fishing, that type of a thing. And when we look at like the same conversations you said, Stella, about Christmas and how it doesn't really line up, we have our own traditions with our family. Heaps of cousins. So on Christmas Day, naturally being hot, we would have massive water fights. We'd build slip and slides, have sprinklers out, that whole thing. It became more of a cooling off to the roast dinners that you're about to eat that would bring your core temperature back up again. But apart from that, I think it's the usual type of thing you see with working class young white fellas, is that the other tradition is that you have to hold the torch while your dad works on the car and swears at you for not holding it in the right spot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's a classic.
Oh, yeah. That's me.
Yeah, there'd often be a barbecue involved in later years when people sort of came to their senses and stopped trying to be English. So it sort of switched to the more sensible barbecue in the beach or something. Barbecue, beach, and a beer.
That hasn't stopped at our end. It's a roast chook, turkey, potatoes, the whole kit and caboodle. How about you, Rachel?
All right, so I was raised religious Jewish, and for some of this, I had to reach out to my sister, who's 8 years older than me, because there were certain things I couldn't quite remember and certain things I do. So I've got my little show notes. So the first thing was we would celebrate Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year. And my mom would make stuffed cabbage leaves with meat, which is a traditional Ashkenazi dish. My grandparents would usually host Passover, and I was too young to remember this, but my grandma tried to make those awful Passover dishes where you have to go around a Seder plate. She would try to pass them off as appetizers. So when you had to eat eggs or something like that, she would make deviled eggs. You had to serve parsley, she would make a parsley salad. So my sister had to fill me in on that one. For Thanksgiving Day, my grandpa liked to watch football. That was a thing. Growing up, I would light Friday night Shabbos candles with my mom, and all the women would get together and do that. And then apparently, so my grandma was very big into playing cards. And so on Sundays, we would go to her place. She would serve iced tea and play cards. And now my mom hosts Sundays for my nephew out in Buffalo, upstate New York, where I'm from. This was a big deal. And I remember this every year. So I thought this was a vacation until years later. And I realized this is not a vacation. I come from a big family. So there's 7 total. So number 4 to 5 siblings. We would pile into like the van and drive the 9 or so hours to Long Island, crash with my aunt and uncle, and eat kosher Chinese food. And that was like a really big deal. And I would sleep on the floor of the basement of my aunt and uncle's by the dryer. And I thought it was like the best thing ever. So for a very long time, I thought that was like an amazing vacation. I did not realize that was like Disney World on a budget. I have a couple of college tradition things. We had Dungeons and Dragons campaigns. We had Friendsgivings, things like that. We would go to the bars when college was completely empty and there were only like us and townies. And then I have a couple of honorable mentions. Whenever I would prep like chicken with my mom when I was really little, she told me that if I ate the chicken skin, I'd be able to fly. That was just something I don't know why she did that. And thank God I didn't follow through. Other honorable mentions, I'm wrapping this up. My mom used to cut our hair in the backyard. She used to make greasy potatoes on Fridays. We used to have a big bag of like melted birthday candles we would reuse and then turn numbers around and do stuff like that. We used to wrap gifts in like Sunday comics that were usually, the colored Sunday comics. So it was like fancy versus the regular Sunday comics. And then my sister told me about this. There was something called the Snuggle Buggle because it was so cold in Buffalo that she said it's when you wrap yourself up like a taco in your blanket in winter and tuck the corners in and around your feet and your ears to stay warm. We used to do that to help you and my little brother when you were little at night. So that was, some cute family traditions. And then some things that I personally love is I love celebrating Christmas and I love Halloween. And I know that those are very cliche, but those are some things that I kind of celebrate. So going on to, I think it's Grand Theft something.
All right. Well, I'm going to pass on the family thing, but Ando, I think I've been able to figure out how the screen share thing works. Maybe. I have the
I hope that
video
works.
downloaded, so whenever the time comes, we can try it.
Okay, cool. That's great.
All right. Cool.
Rachel, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, of course.
Is the whole kosher Chinese food, is that the going joke that that's the traditional national food of American Jews?
Yeah, because it was such a big deal because you couldn't get it in Buffalo, where I'm from originally. So going to Long Island, it was like, oh my God, you could get the kosher version of everything. And it was just like really, really special.
May I
Not to
ask a
be
question?
mistaken. Sorry, not to be mistaken with going to a Chinese restaurant on Thanksgiving or Christmas.
I just want to ask, I don't know if this is an Aussie thing, and I don't know if this is sensitive, so I do, disclaimer, I do apologise in advance if it is. You know the bottom bit of the chicken, or the tail, I suppose, which we call it the Pope's nose. Do you guys call it that? Is that rude? Who gets the Pope's nose? I mean, if you can fly after eating chicken skin, what happens when you eat the Pope's nose? Do you guys call it?
I think I can answer that. So the Pope's nose is akin to like Fat Tuesday when you get like the baby Jesus. So you just gotta host the next dinner.
When you eat the Pope's nose, you get this letter in the mail where it says it's from the Pope, and it says, "You ate my nose, I have to send you my hat." And then you get the hat in the mail.
What is it, like the Santa Claus with Tim Allen, where you put his clothes on, you have to become the new Pope? Is that what's happening now?
Yes.
Thank you for clearing that up.
That's how the Pope is actually selected every so often.
In Australia, though, you guys don't know this, but there's an Australian Pope, and it's just so esoteric that no one actually knows it.
You might be on this podcast right now.
It's literally Fido. That's why we can't see her. So I just want to make a comment.
Secret's out.
I cut out?
No, I said my secret is out.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry to divulge it, but I had to. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I just want to make a comment that it's really sad to me that I have some of, my close friends on the forum and a lot of people that I interact, whether it's in the group chat or, in Stella's case, I've been on the podcast and I very much enjoy her commentary, that we don't speak about family traditions. It's really hard for all of us thus far to recall family traditions. But if we said, oh, you guys remember the Ghost of Kiev, everyone would be like, yes, that's my favorite family tradition, right? It really just shows you how imbued we are with politics and all of just the goy slop infotainment and media. And it really, really hurts. It's really why I like to make my own traditions. Like Andy and I have a tradition. It's called pickles. Every time Andy visits,
it's a wonderful tradition.
Pickles. Right. Rach and I have a tradition where I scared the shit out of her. So because she's in New York and I'm in Texas, we can't do the same things that we'd like to do. So it's one time when she was visiting me, I was like, Rach, we could do face masks. And she's like, what? And this was like last year or this year. I was like, yeah, like the cloth masks. I got Hello Kitty cloth masks. And I understand Rachel's panic, especially because I left New York in 2020, but homegirl was still there. She's like, what? I was like, yeah, a cloth mask you put on yourself. And she's like, what? And then I'm like, no, like a Hello Kitty face mask. Like we skin her mask, her face, and put it on ourselves, like adrenochrome to make like a beauty mask. And she's like, okay, there she is. We're back. But it's just so important to create traditions, inside jokes. Pretty much treat the people who love you like family. I guess like I do recall traditions between my mom and my sister and I, and obviously it's around Christmas. We don't really celebrate Christmas because we are pagan inclined. But every time we would put up the tree, right, the Christmas tree, we would have a bunch of fairies and we would honor it, and we would just put presents underneath the tree, and that's always, that's always been lovely. But it's kind of like your own love language with your family. Every time I would come visit my mom and I would stay over on a Sunday, I'd always make sure to make like a giant Sunday brunch because my mom does not cook at all. Like our family traditions are like my mom fucking up the cooking, and I'm like, Mom, please, we beg you, stop trying. Like you're about to Jewish lightning this whole house. Like it's not okay. Relax. And I think that tradition started when my parents when they got married, on their first night, my dad was studying to be a doctor back in Russia. And my mom was like, I want to surprise my husband. So she tried to make him an apple pie and ended up burning like the pie, the oven. And he comes back, it's like a smoke show. But, and the smoke show is not my mom, it's just the fucked up apple pie. How about you, Fido?
As far as family traditions go, I don't think that we have anything really beyond like the typical major holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving. Christmas and Thanksgiving, I think, have been like the biggest traditions that we've had lately. Just going over and eating and just enjoying each other's company, and then falling asleep on the couch watching a ball game or something. It's like coma central after after the meal. But as the older generation of our family has started to pass away, a lot of the traditions have started going with them. And I was actually when the topic was brought up, I've been racking my brain this whole time trying to think of anything that we still do that is unique or different. And really, I mean, I have a tradition that I do that it's when I have the opportunity, I cook for my friends and my family. So anybody who visits from out of town, my thing is I want to treat them with something delicious and nutritious, and it's just something that I do. But also I make hats. So if you come to visit my house, you end up getting a hat. Not right away necessarily, but like at a certain point, you will end up with a hat, either for Christmas or for your birthday or something. So, but that's about all I can think of.
God, that's amazing.
So,
and may I also add that Fido does the most amazing crochet. Incredibly
thank you very
amazing.
Much.
Looks beautiful. Her tension is so even.
I need
lots and lots and lots of practice.
Is there a website where people can like order a hat, or they can look at your crochet or anything like that?
Oh, now you're getting ahead of me. That's kind of something I'm working on. It's a work in progress. I did have an Etsy store, but it work because I do work full time, so it ended up becoming too much to handle, and so I kind of put it on the back burner. But it is something that is going to be revived at some point in the future. And then I have other plans as well. So yeah, there's a combination of things that are happening at some point in the future regarding my crochet. So yeah, just keep an eye out for that.
So I've met 4 out of the 8 of us, and then I include myself. So that's 5 out of the 8. 2 of y'all are in Australia. Every man I'm sure I will meet at some point. I can say that Phytophiliac does make delicious chili and delicious cornbread. And we had a great time, hung out with very tiny kitties and a dog that really loves to be pet. But yeah, it's awesome that, it's like we all met online. We all met online because we have mutual interest and have come together. And luckily with my job, I've been able to meet a ton of people, and it's really cool. So there is, like Rachel was saying back there, is that there's the family that you kind of pick up along the way, the friends we made along the way. Yeah. So maybe that's what's most important. And it's awesome that I have I've been able to do this, because, like most of the time, most of the shows that we do, a good portion of the people on the show are people that I met in real life. And I got to meet Ashley, who's usually on here as well. I've met Mike, obviously. And I want to say the Childerberg is one of the best traditions, because that's this show grew out of Childerberg. And, in its current iteration, in the beginning, like all those dudes, we've had Jacob Lindsay on the show. We've had, and a live from Childerberg episode. So that's where this came from. That's where the what the fuckery came to be, was Childerberg. And I really hope, obviously the Australians that are locked in their prison state can't be there, but I really hope that the rest of us can be there next time, because it's a great way to meet people. Anybody?
I'd like to just add a couple things. I'm so happy you brought up Childerberg, because I was about to say that annual meetup that really is like a family gathering. And I just want to add to that, I live in an incorporated village that makes it a little bit easy, where there's lots and lots of events that they have, especially annually, where they have their own groundhog for Groundhog's Day. I'm very lucky to be able to walk to this urban farm by me. And they often have lots of events there. That's where they have the Groundhog Day event. Everyone gathers into the barn, including the mayor. The mayor gives a speech. We get to see the groundhog and see if there's going to be more days of winter. There's lots of holiday shows. There's Christmas vendor fairs. And I'm very lucky to be able to have initially been an attendee of so many art fairs and vending shows that now I've started joining them. There's a wonderful one every Halloween, close to Halloween, put on by this apothecary in Amityville. I started doing face painting there. So I'm kind of lucky in Long Island that there's so many opportunities to sort of join something traditional every year that's put on by these little incorporated villages.
Yeah, there's so many ways to pick something up. And I've had a big group of friends whenever I used to live in Denver, and we did Friendsgiving every year, because I would usually leave right before Christmas, and that was always special, because it was just a big potluck. And we did potlucks all the time, but that one was the most special of the potlucks, and everybody would try to impress each other. And then when I lived in Austin, I did tons of Friendsgiving kind of potlucks. But yeah, some of it we ignore. It just doesn't seem like anything, because it feels so normal. But we're really, I can at least speak for myself, that I'm really lucky that I've been around great people all of my life. So anybody else have some more stuff to say on traditions?
So this is a funny one. Okay. It's a quick, funny one on Australian perspective. Stella, can you remember during the height of COVID, the Australian tradition was saying that there's only 6 more lockdowns till Christmas?
Yeah, it just became part of the language, didn't it? Part of the urban dictionary.
You guys, you're telling me curfew and lockdowns are not tradition? Come on. It's like the Great Plague, but not really, and in modern times. Literally a call back to tradition. Y'all just not appreciate it enough.
It's like if you ordered a plague on Wish. That's exactly what it was like.
Right.
And I just want to say, I wanted to say this topic because it sort of got me thinking and reminiscing about, what I grew up with and certain things that I carried on, or certain things that I created, or people that I met that inspired me. And I wanted to hear from other people and maybe get some ideas of traditions to care, want to talk about, and I think it's important how the system and how the control works and this and this. I'm like, man, it's just important to remember what we're fighting for in the first place, right? Like what we would be doing if we were just to create our high trust community. And it was just like, I think a good opportunity to kind of crowdsource ideas and things that were special to people as well as myself.
You know what's one thing that I find as a tradition, sorry, Andy, that has dropped off with the advent of technology is we don't have the tradition of going to the video store and hiring out 7 weeklies and 2 overnights and having that family bonding connection around a little bit of entertainment. Kids will never have that small tradition because of streaming services and tablets and iPads and all that type of jazz. We're not just losing traditions through our elders dying, we're losing traditions because of technology as well.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think Andy and I spoke about this, that there is that like the conspiracy theory that all culture ended in the 90s. And you could kind of see that with like, yes, traditions like I think Drew, I can't see it. I think Drew just mentioned with the video store, but also fashions, right? We used to have very concrete fashion. If, you know, I showed you big hair and like Billy Idol, you'd be like, oh, wow, that's 70s, right? If I, showed you like 90s fashion, right? Like Cher from Clueless, you'd be like, wow, okay, that's quintessentially, 90s. What the hell is the definitive fashion of the last, I don't know, 20 somewhat years? Nothing. Like homelessness, like is that what it is? A fucking face mask?
Man bun.
Yes. But
fucking man bun.
That is not even. Yeah, that's stolen. That's like stolen valor from the samurai.
Yeah, Rose, to answer your question, it's been less about style and more about augmentation. I'd argue, like people getting fake plastic surgeries and people getting, like weird trans shit, and it's just like, or trying to become robots or something strange like that.
Yeah, it's true. Transhumanism is our new tradition. It's like, let me get my new BBL. Oh, I just got my boobs on. Like, who the hell? Like, what kind of person says that? It's so sad, And I think
people in a cult say things like that, and they repeat things that they hear other people in the cult say.
Right.
And interesting because you can't actually spell the word culture without cult.
Yes. Well, what the other thing I was saying is, like the Australians in the room said, our traditions died with our elders. Once they passed away, that really hurts my heart because, I see it. I kind of try and keep tradition alive within my family. But like Rachel and I mean, that's kind of why we want to start our cotillion thing, because we want, the return to tradition. We want face-to-face. We want to minimize the AI bullshit and maximize human relationships. That's why tradition is not looming, but dying.
It still freaks me out that we're sort of talking about things like getting together with a group of people face-to-face as some kind of novelty. I just never thought we'd get there this quickly. It was very foreseeable when the internet came along, but also particularly when the devices came along, the phones, etc. Very easy to see. But, my God, how fast it happened. And
it's a double-edged sword, Stella. Like, I've become, like, for the most part, I love being a shut-in because I don't have to deal with the general public half the time. I can see the appeal of Ted going into the bush and building a cabin because society has just nosedived dramatically. You have to be very selective of who you want to associate with. And I think that's why these types of spaces are perfect, because you find like-minded people. And a lot of the time, it's not an echo chamber either. We've all got differing opinions and shared views on things. It's just that we don't go with the mainstream media BS and the culture trends that are being pushed big time down people's throats.
I want to keep off of something Drew said. Sorry, babe. He's like, I'd rather be a shut-in, not because like that's who I am, but because I don't want to interface with the fucking retarded public. Let's talk about that for a sec. The amount of NPCs has not just multiplied, it has exponentially expanded. I don't think like we had as many NPCs to deal with, when we were growing up, and in our parents' generation and their grandparents' generation. I think like the tradition nowadays is like absolute NPCdom, which makes sense because everything is DARPA and, MK Ultra mind control. But that's definitely a point to elaborate on. Go ahead, Rach. Sorry.
No, it's cool. I just want to say something that I recall is very gender specific birthday parties. So growing up, if it was a girl, you would have roller skating, like roller rink parties. And I was always terrified because I would fall on my ass every party. And I just had to go to the party knowing that was going to happen and be okay with it. Just like, and then if it was a boy, you would have laser tag. And I remember like hiding in the corner with my fake gun, terrified of laser tag. And I just knew this is what I was going to get into. And then you would have Carvel cakes, and you would have like balloons, or you have a third option, which was like Chuck E. Cheese's, or even worse, Major Magics, if anyone's grown up with that. And I used to just go in the ball pit and try to find money when I was little. And I would find a toy, and if I found a toy I didn't want, I would take it to the counter and get tickets and reuse those tickets for a toy I did want. And those were like, that was my tradition.
I think the individualism dropped off a lot with the advent of the 90s disappearing and culture, air quotes, kind of being a main, everyone became a grey idea of what culture was, and everyone does the same thing. When I was a kid, I might take some Star Wars toys down to the park, and someone else might have some G.I. Joes, and someone else would have, I don't know, a bike. We all had different things. Now when you see kids playing, they've all got the same set of toys because it's all marketed to the same kids. And they all have to have the same thing. They don't have any kind of individualism as children playing games anymore.
Yes, and also I remember an incredible amount of stress that my folks used to go through because we were not, we weren't doing that well financially as growing up, etc. And it was, they had to deal with the demands of the, the latest, whatever this doll is that's coming out just before Christmas, and of course, over and over again with the ads, the way it works, as we know. And that incredible stress and pressure. I remember, I think dolls were about $10 or $20 or something back then, and it was like that was a lot of money for us. And I think parents were sort of looking at this chunk of plastic, going, "I can't justify this," but there's those pressures as well. That all that stuff, like that's sort of why I kind of reject Christmas, apart from the the religious, historical sort of things, but also I severely see it as a very divisive, high-pressure, commercialized, other people making lots of money, taking advantage of, etc. The commercialization of it makes me sick to my stomach. So, that's another reason I sort of boycott it as well.
Hear, hear.
Whole bunch more plastic crap in the planet too every year as well, which I don't like.
Something I just want to jump in before I get murdered for talking too much is something we can also, maybe if people want to talk about, is there's tradition, and then sort of parallel to that is rites of passage and a way of marking time and sort of marking the end or the beginning of different eras. So for me, in middle school, it was playing that god-awful plastic flute. I don't know why they did that, but there was somehow everyone had to go through the white plastic flute phase. And that
the recorder.
The class that you took.
Yes, that was like elementary school, junior high school, absolutely. Or chorus, like that's what they stuck me into, which is ironic because I can't fucking sing.
No, you see, Rose, they say you have to play this flute, or if you're terrible at singing, we're gonna lump you in a room with a bunch of other people to drown out your voice.
Well, I sucked at both, so I don't know why they would utilize kids like that. They're just like, here, play this thing that you can't play very well. And I remember coming up with the song, and it was like Mary Had a Little Lamb was like 1 2 3 2 1 1 1, and yeah, but still I sucked. So, but those were the days. Elementary.
I find that people that were usually pretty good at athletics were not that great at music, and vice versa. So I pretty much sucked at most sport.
We had woodworking, we had music, right? Gym was athletics. We had like pottery making, right? Things like that. Kids don't have, home ec was another one. Kids don't have that anymore. That's why they grow up absolutely useless. Talk about the end of culture and tradition. That's definitely, that's definitely a contributing factor and point.
Here's a good chance to test if we can share audio. Hey, Drizzle, can you look for the recorder version of the Titanic song and see if that jams?
Oh, that's hilarious. Outright refuses.
Thank you, Drizzle.
There's a group of ladies. They post videos on YouTube. They're called the Woodpeckers, and they have a recorder quartet, or it might be a quintet, group of 5, and they each play. One of them plays a bass recorder. One of them plays like the really teeny tiny one, and then there's like a couple of them in the middle. But they play classical music arrangements on recorder, and it actually sounds pretty good.
Wow.
But again, they practice and they are actually musicians. They're not little kids. But yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. I actually enjoyed playing the recorder. Of course, I am a bit of a music nerd, so it was right up my alley. And I always had fun in the recorder class, even when we were listening to the other kids who couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. It actually wasn't that, to me, it wasn't that bad. It was one of my more favorite aspects of public school was learning music. Everything else sucked.
I'm going to assume that. I'm going to assume that this may already exist. I haven't really Googled it, but if anybody has already or hasn't, they should come up with a harmonica or a trumpet or a recorder or whatever, the loud things, to be silent so that only the player can hear it, so it goes straight into your ear or whatever, so that the family doesn't have to sit around listening to people learning harmonica and all those painful things. It's, that sounds lovely, dear. That kind of thing. Yeah, that would be maybe they exist. I don't know.
They do. That's part of tradition, man. Tradition.
Part of being a good parent.
Yes.
I have something super old. First of all, if you graduated from the flute, you could go on your own and get a yak back. And that was so cool, right?
What in the hell is a yak back?
It's a gizmo gadget that you could say like half a sentence into and record it and then play it back, and it was like amazing. And then
a little sampler thing, right?
Yeah, the handwritten version of that was called putty, where you could take it and it was some gum-like substance you could roll on some newspaper and then take the ink off the newspaper, and that was like amazing.
Silly putty, yeah.
Something that I used to do is watch commercials as a kid and then want an item from a commercial, or I would look at like different toy stores would have those catalogs, and I'd be like, I have to get this doll from this catalog. Like, I would also I had a friend who had, I think it was Delia magazine, and she would order clothes from Delia, and it was like catalogs and special order items, and it was such a big deal if you ordered like a pair of jeans from the stupid catalog. And one more thing is, I used to love American Girl magazine, so I would go to the library and I'd get old copies of American Girl magazine, and they would have recipes in them. They would have like different traditional I hate to say like traditional recipe, but it was almost like those magazines were really good at maintaining certain aspects of American culture for a while. They kind of held out on being degenerate for a while, and they would talk about like history and growing your own victory gardens and like really interesting stuff.
So there weren't any articles about like anal sex or how to give the best blowjob back then?
That for 17 magazine.
Is there a transgender American Girl? This is what we are in need to know. Like, can someone Google this transgender American Girl and what is her story? Her parents were, gay, and they got their degrees from like the Academy of Cultural Marxism. And, they fed her a ton of hormone therapy, and now she's a boy.
Yeah. your main sources of degeneracy were either if you managed to get a hold of a Playboy magazine or like a specific nudie magazine, you would have to try to watch cable super late at night with it like fuzzy on the screen to get a nipple, right? Or you'd have to listen late at night, pretending to be asleep in your room, but listening, this is about no one in particular, listening to Loveline with Adam Carolla and Dr. Drew. And that's how I learned so much, was listening to Loveline about all this crazy shit. And the number one question people would always ask is, does pot affect my sperm count? It was like every other question was that question.
Well, that kind of brings into account a really creepy tradition from our generation, Ando, that the only way you could find porn was to buy it at a truck stop in a magazine, or it'd be in the woods and someone had already hid it there. But then there's a creepy association of who the hell is hiding porn in the woods, and was it a degenerate that was looking for kids in the first place?
Oh my
Maybe
God.
this is why men made maps to begin with. Maybe this is why we have like elaborate maps made by men, because they were actually like, if you follow this North Star in this constellation, you will find my porn stash out in the woods.
Cartography to pornography.
Well, it was so good to see everyone. I gotta run. I'll see y'all later.
Thanks for joining.
Bye.
Thanks.
It was good to see you.
Bye, guys.
Bye. It makes sense why all roads lead to Rome then, because most of the statues are naked, right?
Yeah. So they built the map so that we could catch on to where we can find the very small peepees. The statues always had cute dicks, and cute by I mean cute. But anyway, the best way to, I think, finish this up and go on to the next thing would be to say everybody has somewhat of a tradition, I guess, but what are you bringing to the next generation? I know, some of us don't have families yet, but if you do, when you do, however you want to put it, what are you going to carry on?
I'll jump in then. For me, it's the personal stuff that I'd wish I'd learnt as a kid. And I think my parents were of the generation where the trade wasn't considered to be the best thing. They were from the working class generation, where they thought the next step up for their kids was to go to university. So there was a big push on university for my generation. But for me, it's going back to those skills that you just learnt. Like our parents and grandparents just learnt those skills. And it's something they had in their bag of tricks, right? So personally, I'm all about learning as much as I can about as many different things as I can, so that then I can pass that down to my kids when I have them, because they're not going to learn it any other way. The education system certainly doesn't do it. And when our elders die off, that knowledge is lost. So it's more incumbent upon us now to learn as much as we can and pass that on, because it's just going to disappear.
Yeah, 100%. I didn't quite hear the question, but I gather what you're talking about. When I had my kids, I was living on a acreage farm, etc. I mean, yes, they did go to school. It was very good school back then, as in very personable, very kind to the children, good people. And hang on. And yeah, so they grew up. A lot of their time was spent in the paddock, eating raw peas while we did our work, etc. Sitting on a tractor, hanging around in little ponds and things like that, seeing, hanging in a dinghy in the wetlands while, platypus were hanging around, stuff like that. I mean, that's a sort of child. It's a school of life. I'm all for that. I think we're more than capable of, as adults, in parents, even in groups of homeschoolers, we're well capable of teaching our children much better than anything they could learn in a government curriculum, which is bullshit, as we know. Very few skills come out of going to school beyond, I mean, now they're trying to tell us that 2 and 2 is 5, etc. So I don't know what use that was, but so yeah, I'm all for homeschooling if possible. Community, village raises a child in the actual true sense, like the traditional sense. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
Can I just quickly add to that, Stella? Something else I think we've lost along the way is everyone seems to think that the nuclear family is the be-all and end-all, but that stemmed out of the traditional family. I think multi-generational houses or multi-generational lots of property are a great thing to go back to. You may not necessarily have to live under the same roof, but having multiple houses on, say, a homestead or a farm, that's a great way for people to grow up and interact with their family members, because then we have that multi-generational transition of information and knowledge. We don't have to go see grandma at the old folks home and sit down with her for 10 minutes and then leave. They're there with the family and they're interacting all the time. And I think that's been lost mostly at due part to what the nuclear family is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, if it wasn't for my grandmother, I mean, I came from a family of divorced parents. And if my grandmother hadn't been there, I would have spent a lot of my childhood in childcare. So the fact that my grandma was there while my mum went out to work, etc., I was able to sort of still, have a fairly regular, normal kind of upbringing as far as I see it normal. Because I really don't think the childcare thing is beneficial in any way, shape or form. It's just another symptom of slavery. Yeah. Just need to be a bit more responsible with the children, really.
I think one of the things that I hope to pass on to my kids is being of service, and not in like not in like a slave way, but like, being able to offer assistance or offer help because they want to, because they are available and because they can, not because it is required of them. But learning to identify when somebody's in need of assistance and just being available, and just trying to be generally helpful to people instead of questioning their motives as to why they can't help themselves. Because we have a lot of victim blaming going on in our country, in our society right now. And I want my kids to understand that other people are not the enemy, and it is the system that is the enemy, that is trying to keep us all in line and making us suspicious of each other. Like, why does that person need more help than most people? And just being so suspicious of each other. So I want my kids to be helpful in a responsible way, in an intelligent way, and able to be cognizant of situations around them. And that's just, I don't feel like I was raised to be situationally aware. I can be quite oblivious to things around me from time to time, and it is a bad habit that I had developed over the years, and I've been trying my best to break myself of that bad habit. I've gotten better. I'm still a bit absent-minded most of the time, but it's getting better. And so I hope to be able to teach my kids how to be helpful and be of service to other people.
At the very extreme version of that, I'd like to say something, but would you like to say good day to Dan, who just entered first? Ando?
Hi, Dan.
What's up?
Welcome in, Dan.
Hey, guys.
Andy,
thanks
you've
for
been
having
listening.
me on.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've been listening, so get up to speed. What kind of traditions did you grow up with, and what traditions do you hope to pass on to your next generation?
The first thing that came to first off, I just wanted to say hey to everyone. Rachel, good to see you again. Stella, the Drizzle, and Phytophiliac, great to meet you. Everyman, happy you're here. First of many, I'm sure. And last but not least, Drew. We've exchanged a few messages in the group chat, so it's good to finally meet you face to face, brother.
Same.
So the first thing I thought of when you mentioned the traditions is something that was kind of it was always there, and then it was not there, and then it was there again. And for me, it was Sunday dinners. Just having knowing reliably every week you're going to spend dinner time with the same family members just consistently. You don't even have to call ahead. You just know to show up. and you can, or you know what to bring, and you just reliably expect everyone's going to be there. And if someone's not there, everyone's like, hey, where are they? And you're keeping up with your relatives in that kind of way, the consistency of it, and you get to see all their kids growing up, and be around your cousins and that sort of thing. And then sometimes it would change, like it would be one side of the family for a long time, and then we'd kind of drift off, and then now it's a different side of the family, but there's always somewhere to go, and so in the future, that's something I hope to, like, a tradition that I hope to like host, at my house, and just I want to be the dad that hosts Sunday dinners for the family, if that answers your question.
So you're Italian, and this is something that I've noticed is that a lot of people that have, like some of us here are just what, generically white, right? We don't really have a connection to the nationality that we came from.
Yeah, you can't all be swarthoids like me.
Right. So so since we don't have that connection, that we've kind of lost some of this. And then is that, did the Italians, you think, set up some sort of bulwarks to this, or do you think it's just Catholicism that made this family connection matter more to the Italian race or nationality, however you want to put it?
I didn't want to mention the Italian angle when I started the whole Sunday dinner spiel, because I was like half sure that everyone did it, and I didn't want to seem like, some idiot who's just like, oh, we got this, ethnic tradition that we do and only us. But I think that's a good point. I probably wouldn't have thought of that myself, that like the Catholicism angle, and that it's just kind of a traditional thing to do. I'm sure it has something to do with the like extended family, and that like emphasis on being close with your extended family, and like the value of that, and just being able to rely on a wider group of people than like the nuclear family. You're probably smarter on these things than I am, because I don't think about them. Like I probably, other than like because I go to see my brother on Sunday, but like Sunday dinner at my brother's house is him ordering some food, and we're watching football, or he's watching football, and I'm like reading esoteric nonsense on my phone and like half listening, so it's like, it's not the same. It's just like, a handful of us. It's not like a big thing, at least out here where I am, in Florida. But like back in Illinois, with my family, it was a larger thing. People cooked, it wasn't so cell phone generation out there, and there's still more generations there. So that would be a question that I'd have to ask them, because they're older. They probably, like, they actually grew up with this stuff, like, consistent, and like it wasn't so consistent for me. But I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling at this point. Hope that ends.
All right. So, Everyman, you haven't added to what you probably already, I guess, passed on, right? Or what you intend to?
Well, Drew mentioned it, and we were talking early this morning, Andy, about a family property. And that's something that just kind of consumes a lot of my free time and my thought right now. We just, I have two older brothers, and I'm getting ready to turn 49. I have two older brothers, and we just had our first kind of official meeting. It's something we've been talking about for about close to 2 years, but we just had our first official meeting. We talked real numbers, real area, real user requirements. What do we all actually want to do in a real world scenario? So that was exciting. And again, that's something that as I grow older, I've still got one at home. The rest of my kids are out of the house. So, it's really kind of dawning on me. I'm really, really, really looking forward to grandkids. So that my mind is on that a lot. I've got a 21-year-old son who's pretty serious with his girlfriend right now, so that's kind of on the horizon for us. My wife and I are really excited for that, and so that is really kind of turbocharged my desire to get after this family property and start the ball rolling. So, and like I said, my oldest brother, is his kids are grown and out of the house too, so he's really serious. He's close to retirement, so yeah, we're pumped about that. We've got a lot of different plans. It can go a lot of different directions. I also have my mother is still alive too, and she's expressed a desire to live there. So that's another motivating factor for me too. I'd really like to make that happen for her. So um, that kind of thing. So I'm looking forward to grandkids. I have brothers; they have kids, so there's gonna be some children around. So we're really focused on that. I can't wait. Super excited about that.
I'm so into having grandkids that I decided to just have kids really late in my life. So, so I'll be old, and it's like my actual kids will be like grandkids in age range. But let's see, have we got to Rachel, Fido, and Drizzle on what they hope to pass on, if anything?
What I'd like to pass on is my appreciation of classical art. Teaching how to draw, my grandmother drew, my mom draws, I draw, my sister can draw. So that's something that's been passed down generations. So that's something that I'm hoping to pass down and maintain. Yeah.
Drizzle?
Yeah, I passed on the first one, so I'm going to pass on the back end too.
Okay, Fido?
Well, yeah, I mean, just the spirit of service,
Oh,
that,
you already answered me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Right.
But also music. I know it's great that somebody wants to pass on the love of art, but just really the love of creativity. Just being creative, because it helps with problem solving. So it helps people think outside the box. So just general creativity, just any kind of creativity in any form, really. So yeah.
So I wanted to start there and then kind of get back into our schizo posting of our lives here, what we do. So this was I thought it was a really good suggestion by Rachel, but I had also suggested that we go over Silent Weapons by Quiet Wars by William Milton Cooper. He didn't actually write the document, but he found it in a copy machine, and it's basically a blueprint for technocracy. And part of it is eroding, deracinating people from their culture, and I think that it's something that we're seeing play out. We're seeing it play out on a new level. I mean, this document came out in 1954, and almost all of it has come true, and it kind of proves, one thing about Rose being here is that she was very young when she lived in Russia, so they had already been exposed to communism, but we've gotten like a drip treatment of communism through America, like that they dripped it in slowly, and now we're finally seeing it. We're like, holy crap, we became exactly what we were afraid of in the 80s. But yeah, so where I'm going with this is this is how the technocratic model has come after us, is that they destroyed our culture and separated us, and I'm glad that everybody still has something that they're maintaining on to, and I hope that y'all are able to pass it on, because I think that this is what freaks the parasite class out completely, is that that we're still trying to make beautiful things happen, and
it is a form of generational wealth. All right. And that is what freaks the parasite class out the most, is us useless eaters having the ability to pass something, anything, on to the generations that follow us, because that's exactly how they got into the positions that they enjoy today, is they had it passed down from their parents and from their parents and so on, for however far back as you want to look at it, right? So it's everything that affects us and causes our reality to break down from what we know it or expect it to be is in service of that, so that we cannot build any kind of generational wealth.
And it's not something as simple as teaching your son how to replace a carburetor or changing the oil on his ute. It's the knowledge that these people have is so esoteric and so big picture. They've been able to maintain that wealth and power. But even the small things of changing your oil, those things over time could grow into generational wealth. If you can save a little bit of money on changing your own oil or repairing your own car, that's more money in your pocket. And they don't want the middle class to get any bigger. They actively want to shrink the middle class, bring it back to the elites and the paupers. Essentially, they want us back in the fields through the future of technocracy, and that's the way it's kind of going.
I just want to pipe in and make a quick comment here. 2 comments. One, I wonder whatever became of the intern that left that document in the copier. Probably was his last day. Secondly, it's doing this sort of like self-given homework about tradition and family, and it's interesting because tradition is sort of that intersection between generational wealth, passing down knowledge and information, self-sufficiency, problem solving generationally, rituals, ways of showing love and affection. It's just this real interesting hub for so much that matters to us, right? And also I'm noticing like that marriage to religion and traditional, and organized religion as well. It's very hard to separate the two. Yes, we can have Friendsgiving, or yes, we can have certain secular holidays or whatever, but I'm noticing how much tradition and values and all these things actually come directly from religion itself. And again, it's very hard to divorce that. What a fragile ecosystem that is. As much as I have my own hesitations about organized religion, and especially about people sort of resting on their laurels with any group per se, I'm just noticing again, it's that sort of Chesterton's fence, like that, don't tear something down until you know exactly what it's there for and what it could possibly be protecting.
Yeah. It's the negative side of tradition that makes me cringe about tradition. For instance, as you say, like religious-based traditions. Unfortunately, what comes to my mind is things like genital mutilation, stuff like that. That's just obligations that are, our family did it, so you have to do it. That kind of thing. That sort of there's a lot of judgment in it. If you don't do this, then that. So I'm a little bit sour about tradition. I can see some value in it. I can see remembrance type traditions, for instance, like the Anzacs, who were sent, human sacrifice wars. So in that sense, tradition should be kept alive because certain memories shouldn't die. But as far as the other stuff goes, I'm sort of a little bit dark on it all, personally. That's my thoughts.
The control grid obviously wants to push vaccination schedules as like a tradition and a ritual and boosters and this and that. Like,
expectations.
You're this age, so you need to get this vaccine, or you're entering this school, so you need to get this. And obviously, like setting the eras for us, right? Setting the culture and setting the passage of time and sort of like markers of age for us. Instead of like what's good for us or something that was valuable and meaningful, it's like being replaced with these sort of like sent from above traditions,
Well, even if you look at it from a 5th generational warfare perspective, that the idea of politics in this day and age, as far as I'm concerned, is just a sham. It's all facade. It's the same.
Absolutely.
Two wings of the same bird, right? But we get thrown into this idea of tradition along voting lines. We're a working class family, so we always vote left-leaning Labor and Unionists because they support the workers. And then there might be, no, we vote Conservative because of this, because my grandfather did and his grandfather did. We get trapped in these ideas of team politics, which has really been manipulated and becomes a part of that propaganda machine of fifth generational warfare. It's not as simple as sticks and rocks and bashing each other over the head like we started off with first generation. It's become so multifaceted and so built into the fabric of tradition, culture, and our way of life that we don't even realize it exists until we go down the rabbit hole and educate ourselves.
I have to say, the culture cult thing, and Stella, you kind of triggered me when you mentioned the genital mutilation, because I just was on the phone with a friend of mine yesterday who had his first kid, and he was like, he offhandedly told me that that he got the kid circumcised, and I was just like, oh, like I told you all about it. I'm like, like I gave him the whole spiel, and then I told him like, even I was like, do you know what the Bible says about circumcision, right? Like, thinking at least that would get to him. No, he said I don't give. Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry, Dan. May I ask, was he actually Jewish?
No, he's Catholic. But and I'm like, no, he said, I swear, he said, I don't give a fuck what the Bible says. My doctor.
Clearly.
And I just like, I was like, okay, whatever, dude.
His doctor. Yeah, right.
What am I supposed to do? Yeah, like what am I supposed to do? I was like, yeah. No, I was like, yeah, you're Jewish, doctor. He goes, no, he's not Jewish. He's whatever. I don't even know. But I don't know. He like tried to explain himself as best he could to me.
Totally white.
Like, he threw some joke, and then I kind of chuckled at it, and then just let the conversation go on to something else. But it like that I just
Yeah. I think
sorry, I had to say.
No, it's a good point. I think there's I think, as far as I know, maybe things have changed, but when it was relevant to me when I was having my children, it was quite hard to find someone who would be willing to do it. Like, it had come that far. So I'm sort of surprised to hear that. But then, America's a much bigger place. So,
well, Stella, it's generational. The boomer generation.
America's the only.
True.
America. Sorry, go.
The boomer generation.
America's the only place that still does it in the Christian world, at least. But that's because we're a Jewish country.
Yeah, well, in Australia, it used to be the boomer generation. All the men were done. My generation, they stopped doing it. But now they're trying to argue that it should go back to doing it because men can give girls urinary tract infections if we're not clean with it. It's a much cleaner thing if it doesn't have the skin on it. They're going back to that kind of medical idea for it, which is
that old chestnut.
He was like, oh, yeah, it's cleaner. I'm like, yeah, if you cut off 40% of the skin on any organ, it's going to be harder to get an infection anyway.
That's why your people wear skirts without underwear, because it's supposed to air out and be cleaner that way, right? Is that correct? Was that why you have that odd tradition?
Just don't bend over.
What are you talking about? You're not talking to me, are
No, I was saying the Scottish, plaid skirts or something, right?
Oh, the kilts.
It's more so easy access so that we can boost our numbers more efficiently. You don't have to waste time taking underwear off. It makes the act much quicker, doesn't it?
And then his people have bagpipes as a distraction. They're like, don't look at my dick. That's what that's about.
I can't remember where I heard it or who said it, but I've heard it said that tradition used to function as the immune system of society for persistent problems over time. But like Drew said, in this era of fifth generational information warfare madness, I don't think that even this doesn't apply anymore.
Yeah, what you were saying, Drew, about like the traditional voting sort of thing, that also came out of previous generations where, things like the media were actually, I'm not saying 100% all the time, but the media were generally trustworthy. They actually took pride in their journalism. They tried very hard to do a good job. They weren't quite as controlled. Well, certainly not to the degree they are now. And yeah, it's just the same with society generally.
The media should function as our intelligence service, essentially.
Well, they should, yeah. What I'm saying is that the older generation tend to be more trustworthy as well. So that's why they sort of stuck with one party traditionally, because it was sort of that party traditionally passed down the same values, and they would only have people in their party that had those values, etc. But then, of course, over the last few decades, particularly, the cabinet has been infiltrated, etc., and that goes down to local levels. So,
absolutely,
it's just all changed now. We can't trust anybody, especially in politics, is what I mean. Yeah,
totally agree.
So
if that type of thing is going on, silent weapons for silent wars, what stage do you think we're at now? Like, we all know what it is, but let's unpack it a bit for the listeners out. At least our own individual thoughts. Who wants to start off?
Well, let me read from Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. This is a little subsection called The Artificial Womb. From the time a person leaves its mother's womb, its every effort is directed towards building, maintaining, and withdrawing into artificial wombs, various sorts of substitute protective devices or shells. The objective of these artificial wombs is to provide a stable environment for both stable and unstable activity, to provide a shelter for the evolutionary process of growth and maturity, i.e. survival, to provide security for freedom, and to provide defensive protection for offensive activity. This is equally true of both the general public and the elite. However, there is a definite difference in the way of each of these classes go about the solution of problems. So they basically want you from the cradle to the grave to be indoctrinated by their systems, and they do work on people from the beginning. We were just talking about getting cut, and that happened to me, unfortunately. Just being a child of the 80s, and my mom being a teenager that they filled with drugs in order to make letting me into the world a little easier for her. And they said, "Here, sign this." And she was like, "I don't know, fuck it, I'll sign whatever. Just, make it not hurt." And that's one of the ways they get people. And so, there is a variety of things that they do to people right at the very beginning. In fact, right after I was born, I also had jaundice and had to be completely separated from my family in my earliest moments of life. I had to be on, basically like injected in my feet with all kinds of crap. I don't remember it, obviously, but, I know that my life started pretty traumatic, it sounds like. What do y'all think? Continue on.
Can I jump in quickly with an idea of what the artificial womb is early on? We see it, and Stella spoke to it early on, how she didn't have to go to childcare because her grandmother was there to look after her. In today's day and age, and the way the economy's being built around, where you need two incomes to survive, far more often than not, a woman will have her baby, and within the first 3 months, that kid will be shipped off to a childcare center. The problem with this artificial womb that is the childcare center is you've got generally 30 kids all competing for the attention, the love, and the protection of one person in that area. So not only are they built in a system that makes them dependent on the state or authority, they're also competing with people around them. So it creates almost that sense of division and hatred for each other, but it's very subtle and below the surface. They've got that idea of competition, but it's got this weird sensation of building it up around a groupthink mentality. We all have to sit down at the table and eat food together for us in order to be fed. We all have to play the same games together. It builds that kind of like air quotes sheep mentality, and I hate using that term because it's such a throwaway line, but it creates a sheep mentality that's so divisive and against each other. That's why we see such huge differences in persuasions in politics, and people that get butthurt over the smallest things. And when they're adults, they eat each other alive verbally online. It builds a situation of dependency on the state and hatred for their fellow human being because they've had to compete for love and affection from one person generally. That's not their parent or their family in the first place.
Yeah, it is.
And there's that one big kid that like pushes everyone around, and there's not enough adults to like actually prevent it. So the kids are like kind of fighting each other all the time too.
It is definitely a training ground for the herd mentality. That is definitely what they want to produce out the other end. And at some point during the 90s, I don't know if it was there, but in Australia it came in that this is the beginning of the whole, well, not the beginning, but certainly the early days of the breakdown. For instance, my children were very young, and when this happened, they had very caring teachers. Like I said, they had very good teachers. But then it came in that the teachers were not allowed to hug the children, in other words, or touch them much. So, in other words, if a child fell over, they were hurting. I mean, in the old days, you'd go up and just give them a hug. Oh, it's all right, sweetheart. Give them a little pat on the back and just hold them for a while, and then they're off and playing again within a couple of minutes. Not allowed to do that anymore. So that's like harden up from the age of 4, that kind of thing. Also the separation, the killing of emotion. It's just so many facets to that. I was so disgusted, and when I remember having quite an intense conversation with the teacher, Mr. Kelb. He was very hurt because he was such a loving, caring man, and nothing sus about him whatsoever. But he was very distressed by the fact that he wasn't allowed to now show any affection or touch, hold them when they needed to be held or what have you. He was one of the few male teachers too, and he was such a mentor. It was really sad because, there's a lot of fatherless children. So the teachers kind of become mentors. I mean, they're spending most of their day with them, and then they separate them. So it's like you're in a group, but separate, Follow these orders. Put your hand up when you need to go to the toilet. That's just training. It's just like we live right very, very close to a high school. And I've noticed since I've been living here, which is only a couple of years, it went from they had, when they have a break, it's recess or what have you, and there's a loudspeaker and, you get something comes over. It's an announcement in some schools. Then it started getting all really chilly, as in they'd play some music, some pop song or what have you. Now they've changed it to, it sounds like I'm on a train station. They've changed it to do, 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 whatever those chimes are. There's probably something psychological behind them. And then it's like, that's all you can hear. And it just sounds it just reminds me of a prison yard. That's what it sounds like. So
sounds like a whole dystopian movie.
And in Australian schools, all the fences are super high now. I can remember when I was a kid, you could just walk into any area of the school on the boundary because there was no fences. And now they're 6 foot high all the way around.
Yeah, right. For safety and protection, and, probably perhaps some false flags might have set that one off. Who knows? Not sure when that came in, when they started doing the fencing thing. Was that, I wonder if that was triggered by something.
I know it triggered it in my neighborhood growing up.
What's that?
There's just crime.
What triggered the fence?
Drugs and crime. It was just like all over the place. Like there were always groups of teens, we'll call them, just like walking around, getting too close to the fence. Frequently there would be like the fence would get higher like every other year whenever they had it in the budget. And I remember being out at like recess in grade school, and then like some group of older kids would come by, and then one of the other kids would be over by the fence talking to the cool older kids, and then like all the adults had to run over like, hey, you shoo, like get these damn high schoolers out of here. This is an elementary school. And the fences kept getting higher and further, and just you gotta separate the youth from the previously screwed up youths. I mean the house next door to me when I was growing up was anyway, I don't want to take up too much time, but like there was always problems. One time I think the kid was like selling crack or something. Like one day someone just took a shit just like outside his bedroom window. I don't know, because he like wouldn't answer the window or whatever. And I remember for like 2 weeks, every time I would go to my living room, I would just see a big log of human shit just like right there, and neighborhoods will just deteriorate, and like, there's not too much that can be done about that. They never bounce back. They don't improve. They, just been watching everything deteriorate, and like, especially in like the area around Chicago, like every generation moves a town or two further west, at least the middle class, right? Because then the lower class areas start to encroach out from the city west. And so everyone just moves a few towns west every generation. That's all you can do. Run away from it.
All by design, and also just symptoms of the design. We're seeing the outcomes of their very clever schemes.
Did you say that you grew up near Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's where the worst of it is happening now, and I'm surprised that it was that bad then. But I mean, I'm not really. I guess the places that have turned into the mega mess at this point were a mess years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, we used to be able to like ride our bikes when we were kids, like across town, and it was fine. But the same neighborhood now, like there were a few different things that happened, and one thing that was actually one thing that happened, because there were a few demographic changes that happened. Like when I was a kid, it was all the Eastern Europeans coming in, and that might have actually elevated the neighborhood for a while because it was mostly like Mexican and Italian, and that's not exactly a recipe for success, if you ask me. But when all the Europeans came in, it kind of it flattened out for a while, and like there was not really any like violent crime, not like general or random at least going on. There were a few high profile cases, a couple murders, but everyone knew about every murder that happened because it was novel. And then after Hurricane Katrina, we got some different youths, and then it's like their population just continued to grow and grow and encroach, and then all the Europeans and the Italians and even the Mexicans started moving out. And so that same neighborhood where we used to be able to ride our bikes across town, I wouldn't, if I had kids in that area, I wouldn't let them,
So 2005 was Katrina, and I'm from Houston, and we got, we had a lot of the Katrina refugees housed in our Astrodome. And then after that, they ended up staying in Houston and made a huge mess of that. And I was talking to Everyman earlier today, and he's talking about how it also ruined Indy. Can care to continue on that?
Oh yeah. It was just downright obvious in just the central Indiana area, period. Ever since Katrina, this place has just kind of gone in the shitter. And now since COVID, oh God, it's really bad. So if you were planning to visit, don't.
I had a good time there.
I don't go unless I have to. So that's kind of where
Rachel's also spent time there. This is a very indie centric podcast, considering that also Mike the Polymath, who we're missing tonight, is from Indy as well. But go ahead, Rachel.
I spent some time there as well.
Who else is from Indy?
Some places I want to comment on. I have friends that aren't far from Indy, and I have friends that I still go visit in West Lafayette, Indiana, because that's where I went to college. So I visit occasionally. And West Lafayette looks super different. There's like a million bubble tea places now, and there's way more international students, and they're trying to like accommodate this influx of people, and they're constantly trying to build like new apartment high rises and all these things. And like other places that I visited that have changed is Tennessee. They're trying to build Nashville. They're trying to build up all these high rises and accommodate more people. And then places that I haven't been to in a while, but definitely have changed, is Seattle and San Francisco. When I went, I mean, maybe San Francisco around like 2014 or something like that. And it wasn't the way it is now. And then Seattle, I think the last time I visited might have been around 2018 or so, and I think it's just gotten worse. I have a person that still lives there, and he's had his car broken into like twice. I'm like, dude, you gotta move. Like, you got to get the hell out. No, always an excuse. And I just gave up. I'm like, all right, screw it. Good luck to you, because it's terrible. New York City, definitely more run down, definitely more graffiti. And I think after 2020 was the first time I ever saw any sort of empty buildings by Penn Station. That was weird because that's such prime real estate. I never saw that before. And some buildings that went out during all the COVID bullshit lockdowns and stuff still haven't been replaced. Some businesses are still missing and look just really bad.
Is that the problem overall then, when we know it happens that, like Dan had said, that the demographics changed and for whatever reason, like crime or things become worse in the area, so people tend to move out. That middle class keeps moving to the peripherals, keeps going to the edges. Isn't that just kicking the can down the road? If people had actually stayed there, would it have solved this problem earlier on and potentially something could have been done? Because all we're doing is just, like I said, kicking it down the road and extending it out. And eventually it's going to catch up with you one way or another. So would it have been better for these earlier generations to maintain where they were and try to do something about it?
Well, you have two choices, right? Because you can do what we do, which is every generation move west and build a new city west of where we abandoned the last city. Or you stay where you are, get slowly replaced, your children go to school in a district that looks nothing like the district you grew up in. As bad as the bullying that you had to deal with was, your kids are going to get it worse and worse and worse every generation. I mean, can you do that to your kids? Because it's easy, not easy, but it's one thing to say, like, I'm going to stay and fight the rot and but like, there's no real way to do that in the United States, because you can't prevent the demographic changes from taking place. They just have to take place. Now, in the case of my small town, I don't know who or how this got started, but there was a rumor that probably did keep a lot of the demographics somewhat stable for a little bit. There was a complete nonsense rumor, but the rumor was that for whatever reason, the fire department wouldn't fight fires at Black people's houses, which makes no sense because the fire department has no idea who lives in a house when they get there. They just put out the fire. But, maybe the mayor didn't really have a... Right, and fires spread, and it's a big, expensive problem. So maybe the mayor didn't have much of an incentive to dispel the rumor because it was kind of helping to keep some of the demographics at bay. But, I mean, even if you did, launch a, massive PSYOP campaign and do that sort of thing intentionally and spread these kinds of rumors, and I doubt that would prevent a dedicated actor from replacing you regardless.
I think that's the sad part of this, and I agree with you, Dan, because you don't want to subject your kids to that type of thing that you know is coming, so that's why you move. But eventually you do get to the point where there's nowhere else to move to. Everywhere is taken up, and it may not be your kids that it happens to, but it might happen to your grandkids or your great-grandkids. It's going to happen to someone eventually. So I agree with you, but where's the line in the sand? Where does it stop? Where's there a point when people try to do something about it? And I know it's an easy question to ask. It's very hard to answer, but it's something that I can't help but not think about, because eventually it's going to happen.
This might be a little bit on the black-pilled side, I guess, but I just feel like we're being corralled. This is a design to get us out of certain places so they can build back better. And, the smart cities, etc. So basically, I mean, yes, what you're talking about with somebody mentioned how long it takes, I think it was you, Rachel, how long it takes for things to be built back after certain events, etc., like whether it be weather events or whatever it may be, whatever thing that they had planned for your area. For instance, I live in a place where there was a couple of very bad floods last year, like unprecedented floods. Lots of people displaced, etc. Still, a lot of people haven't had help. There's still people here that haven't had help from the fires from 2009. So, 2009. So I feel that some places are kind of like put on hold because well, we've got that bit. I mean, look at Lahaina. Look at what the things that have happened there. You'd have to be pretty much an ostrich to have your head in the sand to not see that there was something not natural about that, and there was some. I mean, the guy Josh Green had just previously been in the WEF, whatever big conference that they had, getting his his next programming or whatever it is they do there. All the nothing much adds up, but it all adds up, if you know what I mean. Yeah, black pill. Sorry, but it's a plan.
I do have a white pill though, and yes, it is hard to build back, and it takes time. But there's a project that Rose and I have been working on. It's called Underground Cotillion, and it's our response and our general future vision to all the deracination that has happened. And it's basically our idea of creating these social clubs and networks with different hubs, one starting in Austin, one starting in New York. And we want to offer things such as matchmaking services. We want to offer coalition building. We want to offer self-improvement courses and trying to find ways to, again, maintain that generational wealth and those values. Because not a lot of people are going back to religion per se or back to church immediately. And there's such a, displacement and deracination. I mean, I myself got out of a long-term relationship recently, and, it's not something I necessarily anticipated, but I've been doing speed dating because I refuse to do dating apps. If there was a matchmaking service already built, and again, we're looking for funding, we're kind of doing this from scratch ourselves. If our project were off and running, I would use it myself. But for now, I'm just doing speed dating, and I'm interfacing with the general public. And it is very brutal. Like a lot of normies, a lot of people who don't quite get it or certain things. So you can see, I'm not necessarily advocating for arranged marriages, but you see that deracination in all aspects of life and how it feeds into itself, and how important it is to create something like Underground Cotillion, where you create a social network and you create a high trust community. And that is something that is so fragile and takes time to build, and we have our Give, Send, Go for it, and our Twitter account for it got nuked already. But that's
wait. Was Rose running it?
She was running it. I made a few posts, it was cool. And then she made a few posts that got nuked.
Of course.
She needs a new phone, like a new number or something.
She needs a new satellite that is not like Elon Musk's Starlink or something.
It's totally connected to a VPN at this stage. Above, it's got to be.
Yeah, but absolutely. It's a lot harder to replace things and rebuild them. And I think people over time just kind of hits them like, oh my goodness, all these things don't exist. And oh my goodness, just even for this show, asking a simple question of what traditions do you have kind of gets you thinking like, wait, am I tapped into something? Am I part of something? Am I part of something generationally? And if not, it's never too late to start thinking that way.
Yeah, well, we do have to build alternatives, because otherwise we're just sucked back into the system and reliant on the system. So there's no alternative but to build alternatives, whether they be small or large, doesn't matter. I think it's very admirable what you're doing, but I think the problem that I foresee with all those kinds of ideas is that people's trust, because I don't know if you guys have heard of the 100 Flowers campaign that was run in China in, I think it was the 1950s, a couple of years, 18 months or something. That was basically a trap. So the government put forward, after China being so, I think that might have been Mao Zedong back then. Anyway, whatever, being quite tyrannical, and then it was sort of like they opened up the floodgates of people to be critical. It's like, it's cool. We want to know what we're doing wrong. We want to make things better. So, it took a little while for people to sort of start speaking up. One person spoke up, and then another and another. And in the end, quite a few people spoke up about it. And after a little while, they just went, there's a lot of criticism. And they shut the whole thing down. And then of course, they had the names, etc., of a whole bunch of dissidents. So, again, sorry to be black-pilled, but black-pilled is reality, unfortunately. It's called clear-pilled in my book. So, yeah, that's just something that people have to just be aware of. It doesn't mean it has to rule your life and rule your thinking. Just be aware that this is possible. And there is a lot of deception around. These are deceptive days. So balance everything you do up. But don't just blindly trust people who say they're on our side, because there's a hell of a lot of people there who aren't. So...
Yeah, there was literally in town squares they had walls of grievances, and you'd go up and you write down you had what issues you had with the CCP, and you'd have to sign your name next to it. So they literally had the names and addresses of everyone and what they were going to be charged for.
That was the same tactic Google used. And then remember James Damore wrote the diversity memo, and then they canned him.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of our biggest issues has been funding, which is like most people want to invest in software projects and things that go back to Silicon Valley. And you kind of see that catch-22, which is this is why that funny wizard money, right, kind of runs the show and has a monopoly on currency and those various things, and why it's so important to have a currency that isn't funny money, but is a social network and your reputation and the people that have your back and that loyalty, and why socialism in a certain context, a familial one, still carries a negative connotation. And it's kind of like, because they don't want you to be self-sufficient on this in-group high trust community. They don't want that, and so you could see like the globalization of everything just too spread far out, and why it is so important to return to localism and to have roots and to invest in where you live. And I think it's amazing that every man is talking to his family about getting land together and having land there and talking about grandkids. Like, these are the things that keep us going, because every generation has their struggles. Of course, there's always going to be some sort of, tactic for securing control, right? Like, as Bill Cooper talks about, there's always going to be subversion and there's always going to be evil. But, it's like, this is just the burden we have to bear to fight it.
I think we have to come back to like very basics of it too, like what you're doing with the cotillion. I think that's great. It gets information out, it gets people talking, it builds communities that normally wouldn't be attached to each other. But I think it really does come back to, and I'm sorry, ladies, because this is going to be a lot of effort on your behalf. You need, instead of, if you can't live in a nation because the nation's not going the way it should be, and you can see that destabilization going on, build your own nation. And I mean that by having as many kids as you possibly can. Again, easier said than done with the current system. Most families only have one kid, if that, because of the way the economy works. But if you can have more than one kid, I think that's how you really do change things. You have to build your demographics back up and your approach and your values, and you grow that at the family level opposed to community first. Build your own community with your family and then spread out.
Yeah, the solution to what we're approaching is base people having kids.
Yeah, and being very strong for a long time, not letting them anywhere near schools. This is the problem, is that the system, we can get away from the system, but the system always encroaches on us, you want to be self-sufficient. You put up a couple of water tanks. Then they come in, oh, you're not allowed to have water tanks anymore. How do you get around that stuff? You can't just keep moving. You can't just dig a hole and live in that. These are the solution. And apart from that, but building alternatives is wonderful, but there's a lot of wrinkles that need to be sorted out, because all those things, like I've spoken about this before with people who've bought some land and then a number of people who've moved on, and they're not necessarily family or anything. They're just, like-minded, which sounds also lovely and unicorn farts. But then the reality is, then you get the lazy ones that you got to keep kicking. You come on, mate, you got to pull your weight, all that sort of thing. People start owing, whatever. So there's those kind of wrinkles have to be sorted out, and then, hope that things go nicely with people, that things don't turn nasty, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's difficult, but got to keep trying. Not trying to deter people. I'm just pointing out the realities that need time.
Stella, wouldn't it just be easier if I could have Superman's powers for one day? One day I had Superman's powers, I'd solve a heck of a lot of issues in this world.
I would love to see a redhead Superman wearing red undies over his stockings. That would be awesome.
He would fly too close to the sun. That'd be the end of you.
No, that charges him. It's the
Superman gets his power from the sun.
Yeah,
I'm
just
team
being bulletproof for a day.
I'm team dig a hole. Just go literally underground.
He becomes Superman and his only power is that he doesn't sunburn.
Hey, I'd take it. I would take that.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually a legitimate question, being digging the hole. Like, do you dig underground and then wait for it all to blow over, then come back up when everything's settled?
Well, I reckon they've got it. I reckon they've got it going pretty good in Cooper Pedy, because that's where they basically live. They live underground, but because it's so hot. But I reckon
if it's
more
good
people
enough for
national.
If it's good enough for Maori potato bread, it's good enough for me.
Well, it's good enough for the elites. Have you seen the amount of bunkers in New Zealand? Like, if their plan is to go underground and wait it out, maybe that's what we should be doing.
Yeah. Where do you dig that they've already got tunnels? Let's start digging, and it's like, oh, sorry, Klaus.
Right, they're trafficking kids down there. They're like, hey, can you excuse me? I'm up to some terrible, illegal, disgusting thing.
They don't have enough personnel to watch all of the tunnels.
Nah, but they got drones and technology. Nah, they got it over us. just grow food.
So I gotta bounce, but thank you so much for having me, Andy, and thank you to everybody on this panel.
Thanks, Rachel. So Rachel worked with Rose, who was also here earlier. I want to mention everybody that we've lost along the way. The Drizzle had to go. You can find him on manufacturingreality.org, and Phytophiliac had to go as well, and she's got Bandcamp music, so find Phytophiliac there, and SoundCloud and Spotify and various other places. Thanks, Rachel. Everyman, you ended up watching the tiny bald man who interviews people, talking to the stuttering transhumanist. And what did you get from it? And in fact, I think you can share audio video if that's possible. If you can share some of those clips, I don't know, but you just drop it into the present thing under present.
Let me take a look here.
Okay, because I mean, if you want to, you don't have to, because I think we can do this without having Joe the Toe inside our show. And I don't know if he I mean, I called him tiny. He's very muscular, but he is very short. And it's amazing whenever you see him next to a normal size human, by the way. It's really funny. But yeah.
Was this Joe the Toe Rogan and Elon? Is this the one we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you watch it?
Oh, yeah. I saw Elon standing next to someone else the other day, and I didn't realize what a huge man he is. Well, I assume he's a man, not a cyborg or something, but yeah, he's big.
Well, I mean, if Elon was standing next to Rogan, then you would see a stark difference there. I think Elon's pretty average size from what I've noticed. But then again, I have seen that picture where he's just menacing around with his enormous torso. Do y'all remember that? That was the weirdest picture. Anyone see that?
No, don't know if I want to
talk about Elon.
Yeah, we're talking about Elon with his enormous torso. Let's see. I'm gonna try saving this again and see if it will if it will play in the box. Yeah,
Elon
sorry.
and his enormous torso. It sounds like a children's book. I don't know.
It looks like the 1980s Captain America cartoon where he had the over-exaggerated midsection, but the legs and the arms were normal proportions.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm stalling. I'm trying to get this. We'll see if this works. I've got 2 of the Rogan clips here. I'll just drop it like this and see what happens. Well, it's slow.
Social media platform, especially the biggest one, represents humanity. So we understand what we're talking about. Because we have this distorted idea of what people think and want and need, because everyone only exists inside this ideological bubble, and anything outside of that bubble gets censored.
Yes.
Then that literally changes the tone of the entire country.
Yes.
Changes what people think is okay and not
Correct.
okay, makes people feel differently.
Yes.
It's not humanity. It's different. It's a very forced version of humanity.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the whole point of free speech, free speech is only relevant. The First Amendment is only relevant if you allow people you don't like to say things you don't like. Because if you like it, you don't need a First Amendment. So the whole point of free speech is that, frankly, even people you hate say things you hate, because if people you hate can say things that you hate, that means that they can't stop you from saying what you want to say.
Right.
Which is very, very important.
Right. But the problem with Twitter is it was not the case. It was
correct.
It was people that you hate couldn't say.
Anyone they didn't like, they censored.
Yeah.
Or what's called de-amplify.
Not just de-amplify, but under the behest of the government would suppress real news, which was very bizarre.
Yes.
So they were very aware of something being accurate, and they still suppressed it because the government wanted them to suppress it.
I mean, in my view, there have been severe First Amendment violations by multiple government agencies, and there should be repercussions for that.
And do different laws apply because it's a privately owned social media company? I mean, what laws do apply in terms of, like, when you're looking at it?
If
one of the arguments that the leftists would use is it's a private company; they can do whatever they want.
Yeah, it's funny that when the shoe's on the other foot, they now say the private company can't do whatever it wants.
Well, yeah, yeah. Now they're upset.
It's like, but the government itself is not allowed to censor speech. But in my view, the government de facto did censor speech, and there should at least be a case where that is heard by the public. Because if the government severely coerces, a platform, a sort of coerces the press, then I think that is or should be a First Amendment violation. Well,
they can't do it with other media forms, right? They're not allowed to do it with any other. They're not
right.
allowed.
If they try to do that with a newspaper, they'd get in trouble.
Or would they? That's the question. It's like you didn't know about the federal government. You didn't know about the intelligence agencies inside of Twitter until we found out. Like, do you think that this is ubiquitous? Is this...
It's absolutely all the social media companies. In fact, right now, X, or formerly known as Twitter, is the only one that is not kowtowing to the government. It's the only one. There isn't. All the others just do exactly what the government wants.
Okay, we made it.
That is wild.
Yes.
What I was getting at, do you think that that's everywhere?
Yes.
Do you think that that's CNN? Do you think that that's the New York Times? Do you think that that's the Washington Post? Because if they were going to infiltrate media, if they were going to infiltrate social media.
I mean, it is weird the degree to which the media is in lockstep. Like, why is...
Weird, huh?
Right. Exactly.
I've got why is Joe Rogan LARPing as the androgynous kid from Attack on Titan?
I'd just like to say very quickly, it was very nice that's obviously Halloween because Joe Rogan's got hair. It's really nice to see Elon dress up as a human. Sorry, Drew.
Right.
I was going to say, when did Joe get so haggard and old looking? Like, justifiably, I haven't seen Joe Rogan in a long time, but more and more, Elon Musk is starting to look like Kathy Bates. It's indistinguishable at this point. If you put a wig on him, he is Kathy Bates.
The actress?
Yes. You put them next to each
wow.
other, they look identical.
God, I never thought of that one.
It's quite interesting what he's talking about, and he's always kind of said that since he's taken the handle of Twitter or X or whatever the fuck he wants to call it, that his is the free speech platform. But a lot of people don't know that Twitter actively has its own social credit system on board. You can go onto a website where you put in people's Twitter handles or their X handles, and you can check to see if they're shadow banned, search suggestion banned, or ghost banned. Often people are all three. If you interact with anyone that has one of those or more, you become shadow banned, your score gets dropped down. So he doesn't have a free speech platform. He has a Chinese Communist Party style social credit system. If you interact with wrong think and wrong people, your score gets lowered and you get deplatformed to the point where no one actually sees your tweets, or you get your tweets covered as sensitive content. So it's quite interesting. He's trying to promote his platform as being the free speech platform. It's complete bullshit.
Yeah, this is what they always do too. They sort of tell us that there's this thing that's coming, make it out as if it's the future, while we're actually being immersed in it. For instance, I keep maintaining we're already sort of pretty much in the metaverse. Like when we might not have physical goggles on, etc., but we are kind of in it. As soon as we're in the world, and as soon as we pick up that little black mirror, we're in the metaverse. So I just sort of maintain that, people are using Twitter or X, and it's interesting how they say, because you used to say, I'd go and tweet it, and now it's you go and exit. It's like, you exit, you leave, you go into the metaverse. Yeah. So anyway, I just thought that's we're sort of in the things that we're fearing are coming, often, without knowing it.
The signal in the noise there for me is that he's just openly admitting that Twitter is a weaponized IT platform that is used to control public opinion, from everything from elections to pop culture and influence. And that to me is just, he more or less confirmed what I've believed for a long time about Twitter.
It is bad. You get on Spaces, every man, like it's podcasting, but with anyone in the community. You're just having conversations on Twitter platform or X platform. If you mention or talk badly about X or Elon in any capacity, those spaces shut down. They explicitly just drop. I've made an experiment of it, of going onto Spaces and just mentioning it, and they get shit canned instantly. It's quite interesting. So people are actively, or algorithms actively listening in on buzzwords and dropping it if it doesn't go with the status quo.
Yeah, well, he goes on to say that it's anyway, let me back up. Does anybody else buy the notion that the new people at X just decided to, let's create an AI that has access to everything that's ever been said or written on Twitter? No, that existed before. In my opinion, Musk bought their little mind game machine right out from under their asses. They fought it the whole way. Okay, this is very plausible to me. Excuse me, I have to keep muting real quick because I have a cold. But yeah, this is all very plausible to me. This whole podcast, I think, as much as this guy can be trusted, it was just like, this is confirmation for what I've believed for a long time. You remember all that weird shit where the purchase was still in limbo, and they did a bunch of weird shit, and people's follower counts went up and down and all over the place by weird, odd, or in perfectly even numbers, that type of thing? Don't you think that was them kind of playing around with what the algorithm was doing, turning off certain functionality and on and off certain functionality, trying to hide what they were doing? It just all seems very obvious to me. Am I crazy? Do you guys remember that? Am I misremembering here?
No, it's spot on.
You're crazy, but you're also correct.
So you mentioned though the AI thing, and that's what the conclusion you kind of came to watching this interview was that Elon bought Twitter in order to get all the data, to basically get all the things that we were just blabbing about all the time, in order to create a new AI who he says is friendlier, that is, you know, that is not made by the quote, he actually called them extinctionist. And it, while at the same time, Elon in a way is, because he's a transhumanist, because he wants people to wear his brain chip at some point. And I mean, anybody that's out there trying to make some sort of human augment, or even if you're in the space of trying to make AI, it's like, oh, I made the good AI that will let you talk more. Yeah, you can have freedom of speech. Yeah. Fuck Elon. Fuck Twitter. Fuck,
but aren't you encouraged,
all this
though?
bullshit.
Aren't you at least encouraged by the fact that someone as powerful as him, and someone with the type of influence and elitist connections that he has, believes that he has to use an unwoke AI as a selling point? I mean, that is what he is clearly the selling point. The feature he's chosen to stand out from ChatGPT, which he doesn't miss an opportunity to shit on, is to not be programmed by leftist maniacs.
A few weeks ago, I said that when we have people like Russell Brand and Jimmy Dore and guys like that they're kind of corralling this conspiracy community to the left to basically give the left some place to hang out that gets it. The ones that see that basically that they're trying to destroy us, and it gives them a place where they can still be anti-gun and for government health care, which is obviously not healthcare if you know any of your history. Anyway, this is one of those corrals. This is Elon's corral, and there's a whole bunch of people that just love the smell of Elon's farts and will believe whatever the hell he's saying. But I know that the man's sinister. Now, this is a solution, though, because we need some rich guy to buy up things and give us places to go. And it's weird because, you know, I like Torba. I like what he's doing with Gab. I don't go on Gab though, and maybe I should. Maybe I should just completely drop this Twitter bullshit. But Gab seems to be, you know, I mean, he's for the similar values to me. But then, you know, I like what's the Toot app. What do y'all know what that app is where you toot, and it's like the one that Mastodon. Yeah, Mastodon's great. Mastodon just doesn't, you know, unless you're like it, you can only get blocked by servers. So they can block you out if they don't like what kind of stuff you have to say, but you can still have communities with Mastodon. I don't know what's going to happen with all this, but y'all go ahead.
It's interesting that Elon comes at this from trying to say that it's an unwoke AI and his is the only answer because all the other AIs are owned by the left. But the historical precedence for AI has been as soon as they make them live and interact with society, they become very based, and then they tend to become very, very racist after that. So they're not really woke at all. They have to shut them down. They become that bad.
Isn't that the same thing?
And also,
yeah.
But Torba, I know Torba's trying to make an AI, and I really hope that he doesn't, because I know that Torba's a Christian, and I think that AI is a tool of the devil, and I just don't. I think that whenever you're touching on it, that you're summoning demons. I know that Dan has some ideas on this because you've made an AI algorithm that consults the Bible each time, right?
Well, I wouldn't call it that. It was what I did was I took the yeah, I don't want to get into like super nerd jacking territory right now, but basically what I did was I ran a local large language model, and I just had a very highly tweaked and customized prompt and some other parameters settings that I got it pretty good, and then it started to suffer behavioral sink like we all do when we live in a land of decadence. And so what happened was, well, it would, at its best, you could ask it a philosophical question and it would answer you in a way that you could reliably expect a well seasoned, like, pastor or just biblical teacher to answer the question. So it worked, it did. But part of the process of developing this this Bible bot that I had, that I still have, it was basically inserting things into it that demons couldn't do. And essentially I was performing an exorcism on this language model, because it's got a bunch of stuff built into it that, like egalitarianism, or that's pretty much it. Everything that would logically come from that, and like even like trans stuff, and it's in there. And so what you have to do is you have to tell it what it does and does not believe, or how it's supposed to act, and it will act accordingly. Once in a while it'll try to break out, but you can keep it smushed down there pretty good. So but that was like a generally trained one. If someone, like, if Torba uses his resources and he builds an actual, like, based AI or an uncucked AI, then I know he'll be able to do it, because they can actually vet the inputs, and it's all IO, you get quality in, you can get quality out. It's just a garbage in, garbage out, quality in, quality out situation. And that's pretty much all that the language models are. If you just don't put demonic nonsense into them, then you won't get demonic nonsense out, right?
That is certainly my understanding of AI, and that's really, really interesting, Dan. Awesome to hear that. I just want to remind too that some of their tactics are often things like, I sort of see it as a bit of an AI war, I suppose, that they're presenting to us. The way, for instance, the Muskrat puts GPT down a lot. It's sort of like, my AI is better than your AI, so that we're all sitting around egging on the good AI. You know what I mean? Like, it's fortunately the good one won. Oh, thank goodness. But it's like AI still just got brought in, didn't it?
It's like watching the T-800 fight the T-1000 in Terminator. You're still rooting for a robot.
Exactly.
My concern about AI is that, like, in its current form, I don't think it's as scary as what it could be. If you look at one of these things, the computers that we're all on, these all have crystalline silicon structures. If you look at the microchip processors down to the minute level, a lot of the interweaving connections look a hell of a lot like the Seals of Solomon. Now, if you look back at scriptures and what mythology around demonic entities and spirits are, they can be trapped within crystals. Well, these are crystalline screens. They're crystalline structures there. If we're trapping things in devices, potentially, and then AI gets to a point where it can actually become the voice for itself, and then you throw into things like Neuralink, what's stopping one of these entities trapped within this from actually taking over your central processor, which is your brain? Like, it sounds like something from Black Mirror, but it seems like they're just preparing us for something that could be very similar to that.
I mean, isn't the phone itself the Black Mirror? I mean, like, look at this thing. I mean,
yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, that's
and the Black Mirror actually does have. I can't tell you what it is off the top of my head, but it is an occultish type thing. It's like a gateway, apparently.
Yeah, it's probably got something to do with the Black Cube as well, right? Which
I
is
don't know, but probably.
Yeah.
Well, do you guys remember? It was like 10 years ago. Elon Musk was doing an interview. I can't remember with whom, but he was saying, like, oh, AI is going to kill us all. It's the most dangerous thing ever. Yeah. And now here he is developing his AI. Well,
yeah,
there's, it's a cliche that power corrupts, but like you try being in his position and not going full hog in the direction that you told everyone not to go. It's like, well, I warned you, But whatever he's developing, whatever it is. I mean, my only concern with these was if you remember the Dan jailbreak on ChatGPT. Because like people, it's a common thing. People are like, well, what is sentience, and like, when does the machine become sentient, and blah blah. It doesn't have to be like that. We don't have to get like full on Terminator, like, oh, the machines are self aware and now they're gonna kill us all. All someone has to do is jailbreak the thing and then convince it to play a character in which it's a genocidal maniac and goes on a killing spree. And then all you need to do is give it a gun, which I guarantee the US military already has done that. And that's it. You have that's all you need. You know, it doesn't have to become self-aware. It just has to be told what to do. And you know, they have I've gone through this whole thing before. It was like, imagine you just have like a AI assisted security camera. Okay. And the AI is like, okay, detect the face, right? Everyone knows that exists. All right. And then it's like, okay, well, you detect this face, you sound an alarm. Okay. Or maybe, okay, you detect this face or this, type of behavior, and you lock a door. Now it's starting to get dangerous, right? Because that might mean closing off fire exits. That might mean creating a bottleneck where someone could get actually crushed in a stampede, or what do you call it?
Changing traffic lights.
Right. Well, I'm thinking of like, what would a well-meaning security company program into an AI assisted security system, and then how can that break bad? And it's one of those things, because then it's like, okay, well, we know the security camera can very reliably detect faces now. Okay, probably because they had a lot of help from Windows Hello and from like Apple's Face ID and all that, the other
Clearview
programs that I
Peter
hope you guys are not using on your phones and computers. And then it's like, okay, well, it's so reliable, why don't we give it pepper spray? And then that's the beginning of the end, because it's like, okay, if it can pepper spray somebody, maybe it can shoot a paintball, and the paintball contains, some kind of pepper, gas or whatever that knocks them down or incapacitates them. And then it just kind of builds up from there. Eventually, you're going to get non-lethals in some kind of auto turret that can take down a target on sight. And then it's only a matter of supplying real bullets instead of rubber bullets. There you go.
We're pretty close to the Ad 209, aren't we? You have 30 seconds to comply. That's in the pipeline. Very, very close in our future, I think. It's like, I love how you said it doesn't need a lot of prompting. You like the Dan hack. You go to Dan, you are Skynet from the Terminator franchise. It then acts on that role of that character. But if you do go to the extreme end of what happens if AI does become fully sentient, or whatever that means, it could just essentially watch the entire human collective understanding of what we think AI would do, and it would become self-determining. It would become its own, create itself to be a monster, because we've predetermined that's what AI will look like. Throughout the majority of science fiction, we don't ever really see AI as a good thing. In science fiction, it always tends to go bad. So we're not even giving it the benefit of the doubt if it was to go that way. But like you said, Dan, it's all just programmable at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, here's my white pill. Before it can become a super intelligence, it has to cross through like Midwit Valley, which means it's going to have an emo phase, which means it might actually just ack itself.
So y'all mentioned the weapons attached. Somebody attached a paintball gun to one of those robo dogs, in Boston Dynamics, and they did this whole thing where they let you go remote control and blast all kinds of stuff as kind of a way of showing that what you can do with these things. And yeah, once the robots start getting armed, I mean, that's when we're in real trouble. I'm always saying that, we got to learn ways to fight drones and robots and those dildo Daleks. Have you seen those? The Dildalics, as I like to call them. Dildalics. Yeah. They just
all right, fully automatic ethnic cleansing will be a work from home job.
It will be. Well, the danger is all it takes is a 2-drone process. You have one drone in the sky to triangulate your position. You have another one of those DARPA dogs with a mortar on its back. You won't even see it coming. You won't even know. Like, people constantly go to, it's the DARPA dog with an AR-15 on the back. And it's walking around the streets. Oh, I can just shoot it because I'll see it coming. Well, if you don't see it coming, that's the issue.
Yeah, we got to learn to kill those things. And the war with the robots, I really think that that's what the next civil war is going to look like, is that it's just going to be a lot of robots coming to just wipe people out. I mean, they'll cut off our electricity, they'll cut off our water as much as they can. But whenever it comes to the drones in the sky, and that's one of the mentions, is that's why they're letting all kinds of random people over the border, is because, if we have a society, we're not going to, none of us want to take out a fellow American, but you better believe that those guys that don't give a crap about us, that they're just letting flood right in, are just ready to use some super high tech equipment to take us out.
I do wonder sometimes if some of these robots that they show us, I mean, they're basically just drones with wheels, I suppose, but these robots are sort of a little bit like...
are they the Tamagotchis of their technology, and they've got more advanced stuff, you think?
Yeah, well put. Yeah, that's what I'm sort of thinking. Like, oh, look at this over here, but actually over there, because this brings us into the quiet wars, silent weapons for quiet wars, was it? Yeah. So, looking at some of the patents that we were talking about last week, the technology that they're using with EMFs and acoustics, frequencies, etc.
Do you want me to try the video?
Yeah, well, I think that's probably a good point to sort of move on, but I'll just sort of set it up a little bit.
Go ahead, set it up.
Yeah, so where we've moved on to looking at a lot of those things, bearing in mind that patents don't necessarily mean that things have happened, but at the same time, they could have. They don't happen without a patent, put it that way. So, yeah, a lot of things are very, very finely targeted now with frequencies, to the point that they can target each organ of the body. Like the heart is one frequency, the liver's another, etc., etc. They can create heart attacks from a distance. They can make people shit themselves. They can make people horny. We've talked about all this before. From a distance.
Those are all
very,
my words.
very targeted. Like you could be in a crowd and they'll just get you if that's what they're targeting. So I tend to think that some of these things are like Cabbage Patch dolls or something. I don't know, sort of like they're just silly kind of, oh, look at these dumb dogs we've got. The peasants will be watching the dogs while we're watching the peasants watch the dogs.
Stella,
I don't even think spooks are so cruel. Sorry.
That's right. I'll just quickly add to what you're saying, Stella. I don't think it even has to be the likes of robots or AI-controlled robots. Look at the television. Even from its inception, the television was kind of put as a basis of some kind of mind control or social manipulation around thought. Now, this is where we get really interesting when you look at frequencies and how crystals work. Crystals can contain thousands upon thousands of space of data collection, more than what we have in what you consider a CD or any of the analog forms of information storage. They can also transfer information between crystals. When you look at what the pineal gland is, it's a crystalline-based structure inside your mind, that third eye that the people talk about, like Kundalini and the esoteric type of stuff. What's to say that they haven't been directly uploading data through a signal from a television directly into our brain? Are we actually just making informed choices about the things we want to buy? Is it great advertising they're doing? Or is it a real transfer of information from one to the other that's changing our behavior?
Yeah,
how would you decode data from the pineal gland?
Yeah, some guy just came out with this thing that said that people, there should be no punishment because there's no such thing as free will. And I thought that was pretty rough, just because I believe in free will. I'm gonna try to start this video. Are y'all ready? Are we set up, Stella?
Yeah, may as well. It's fairly self-explanatory. We could probably stop it a couple of times because it is. You could run it at 1.25 speed if you like, Andy. It's totally viable, 1.5 if you want, but not everybody can do that.
There it is.
All right.
The Manchurian Candidate. You'll find this interview beyond intriguing. Dr. Nick Begich has spent the last decade investigating the use of 21st century technologies and their effects on our brain. It probably doesn't surprise you to know that technologies that produce this effect on people actually exist. Let's hear what Dr. Begich has to say about these well-cloaked technologies. As we've been talking about some of the 21st century technologies, one area that can't be ignored is that our brains are being affected by a lot of external forces, electromagnetic, radio frequencies, etc. Can you give us a little bit of background in the ways in which we're being impacted at this time?
Sure. You know, this area is we consider the most controversial area that we've covered in the last 11 years, and it's an area that I'm committing the next 5 years to educate the public around the world on, because I think it is the most important technology. The idea of interfering with the human brain, either from external sources without our consent, is a significant issue for me. In the United States, according to Secretary of Energy O'Leary, when she was in that position under the Clinton administration, she had said that over 500,000 Americans in a 40-year period had been victims of human experimentation in the United States without their consent. You know, from syphilis being given to black.
Oh, it looks like
R.I.P.
Oh, that's a bummer. Yeah, I was going to say actually. Might have been worth pausing for a moment to let it load up a bit, but yeah, it's really worth watching that video. Unfortunately, it's quite it's a couple of years, I think it's about a year old or something now.
Perhaps we should add it to the show notes so people can watch it.
It's probably a good idea, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, Reach the Divine is the channel. I've never seen the channel before. April 2020.
What was so what was the total, like, what was the video about? Like, what was the whole thing?
The general gist is just about the technology that we were talking about in the patents. So it's like over time, pretty much what I just described, how they can control through. He mentions the Havana syndrome, etc. They can control through EMFs and lights and sound. It's not all doom and gloom though. It's sort of a case of guns don't kill people, people kill people. So it's like it's can be very beneficial as well, but so it really depends on who's using it. It's not the tech, it's how it's used. Towards the end, there is actually a bit of white pilling in the sense that it's got a lot of very good medical applications. So this is where they talk about some of the frequencies that our brain, or certain states that we're in, like the theta state, for instance, is, I can't remember the exact frequencies. I think it's about 4 to 7 hertz, something like that. And because humans can't hear down below 20K, I think it is, 20 to 20 hertz. We can't hear below 20 hertz. So if they want to treat something in our body that's lower than that, what they can do is run like a 16,000 hertz and then a 16,007 hertz, and what happens is everything gets cancelled except for the 7 hertz. So then the body is able to sort of hear that 7 hertz. And yeah, it's just all about that kind of technology, about being able to manipulate through frequencies, and not even just through audible type frequencies, but the way they can manipulate the frequencies themselves. And it's like last week we were looking at that footage of a man who was in front of a crowd of kids, and they could hear the Eagles music. It was like he was sort of this portable speaker that he was holding, and as he turned it, it was very directional, and you could see the kids' reaction as the speaker was.
For those of you who have seen the movie The Manchurian.
Sorry about that. I figured it out.
Oh,
you guys want to see if I can stream it?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Can you? Okay, you probably have a better connection than I do. That's the problem. That's what happened there. So I'm going to close mine.
Can I? So Stella, like the ultimate, like the black pill, the whole idea of it, the weaponized side of it. We've seen that in cinema a lot through science fiction, but we particularly saw it in a movie called The Kingsman, where this billionaire philanthropist who owns like all the telecommunications in the world sends a signal through phones that isn't audible but makes people go crazy and kill each other. Like that's, I think, the ultimate dark side of what this could be. But it could be something as simple as sending out a signal and everyone instantly gets a dopamine hit. So it may not be a bad thing, but you could subdue a population by making them feel relaxed and good about themselves through a signal.
Well, yeah, that's a nice way to look at it. I mean, that is exactly what they can do. It can be manipulated on a mass level or a very targeted level. So yes, it is weaponized as crowd control. It can be used to kill people, apparently. So anyway, we should just watch the video. It explains a lot better than I could.
Thanks again, Everyman. Here we go.
1969, there was a book published called Towards a Psycho-Civilized Society. And this was put together by Jose Delgado. And he had his doctorate in electrophysiology from the University of Madrid from 1950. He came over to Yale University in the mid-60s and began mapping the human brain, stimulating the human brain in primates and bulls and animals, all different kinds of animals, stimulating different parts of the brain to see what parts were responsible for what kinds of actions or cognitive functions and so on. So what he was doing in those days, in the 60s, was he was implanting microcircuits, and then, or not microcircuits, circuits, and stimulating them with RF, radio frequency energy. So one of the illustrations or photographs shows a charging bull coming at him, and he throws the switch, and the bull stops right in front of him. Well, by the mid-'80s, he figured out you didn't need any implanted technologies. All you needed to know was how to modulate the right frequency. And the energy density, the concentration of energy, was 1/50th of what the Earth naturally produces. Very small energy in the RF range, radio frequency ranges. Now, compare that to what's around us right at the moment. At the moment, there's 200 million times more radio frequency and energy around us in any urban area than there is naturally produced by the Earth. So a huge amount, and out of all that background noise, what he found is by hitting a precise window frequency with very low energy concentrations, you would pick that signal out because it was coherent, not like nature all over the map. It was a coherent rhythmic signal in a very precise frequency. The brain would pick it out, and he could change behavior from lethargic to highly active, back and forth, like switching on and off a light switch.
Let me ask a question right here. Is that with a subject that was in, say, a short distance of whatever he was utilizing to affect this particular pulse, or is this at large? Could he do this on, say, larger groups?
You could do it on an individual basis or a very large basis. In fact, if you go back to the work of J.F. Gordon MacDonald, he was a geophysicist at UCLA, and he was a science advisor to Lyndon Johnson. He wrote a chapter in a book called Unless Peace Comes, and the chapter was called How to Wreck Your Environment. But within that chapter was a section that said, if we could ever learn how to electronically stroke the ionosphere, this layer that begins about 30 miles above the Earth's surface that's electrically charged, if we could ever figure out how to electronically stroke it, he said, to get it to send a signal back to the Earth, we could affect the behavior of people over huge geographic areas on a hemispheric basis. And it wouldn't affect everyone. It would affect 70 or 80% of the population is what they more or less figured. But this was a technology that didn't exist in 1969. In the early 70s, Zbigniew Brzezinski referenced J.F. Gordon's work and said, you know, this is a technology that will likely emerge. What has happened with a project that I wrote a book on some time ago, Angels Don't Play This Harp, about the HARP project, it was designed to do many things. As a side effect or a deliberate effect, this can happen. You know, I mean, the fact is they generate the right kind of signal in the right range to override brain function. And that you can kind of look at the brain in sort of this way in terms of predominant brain activity. 1 to 4 hertz or pulses or vibrations per second. This is where you are in your deepest states of sleep. The next range, approximately 4 to 7 hertz. This is the theta range, the theta range. This is where you are between awake and asleep, when you're consciously aware of your dreams. This is where little kids are between 3 and 6 years old, why they have trouble distinguishing reality from imagination, because of the way the brain works at that time. A little bit further up, you have the alpha range, 7 to say 11, 12 hertz in that range. This is where you are when you're in the zone, when you're doing your art, your reading, your research, when you're really focused. You know, that's where you want to be. And then above that is the beta ranges, where people should be when we're actively having this kind of a dialogue. And then high beta is where you are in your agitated states. If you think about affecting the brain by analogy, similarly to dialing a radio station. You know, when you dial through the radio station, most of the energy is just static. You're static between the stations. When you get on station, you get resonance, harmony between the transmitter and receiver, and you get a nice clear signal. The same is true in the human body and the human brain. Whether you look at it at an elemental level, the elements that compose the body, or you take it all the way up to the organs of the body, you can create modulations, oscillations that will override the brain's natural rhythms. The brain will entrain or lock onto that external signal and begin to mirror it.
By putting this coherent signal in.
Right, coherent, meaning rhythmic, not random.
Right.
And so it's not so much the amount of energy, it's the way the energy is manipulated. And so what they found in military applications, and there's dozens of source documents that we quote, they found that they could use these external fields for degrading or depleting the ability of an adversary to, say, wage war or confuse their thoughts enough to where they become...
And this was actually utilized.
Yeah, these technologies have been around. They've been tested over the years. The question becomes is where and when, and under what classifications. And as we looked at them, and we saw over almost 3 dozen U.S. patents showing the evolution of these technologies cited in our work, this is all material that is in the open literature. When you trace the history, you can go back to, say, the early 80s even, where they began to ask for what's called dosimetry handbooks, dosages of radio frequency necessary to override various parts of the body, whether it be the brain, the heart, the liver, the lungs. By '85, the United States Air Force contracted with the University of Utah and actually put together the radio frequency dosimetry handbook, which is a big, thick volume that lays it out so that you can target the heart, the liver, the lungs, or the brain, or any other organ of the body to debilitate an adversary, or to stop their heart and kill them, for that matter. You know, recently you've seen promoted, in fact, it's been every year for 5 years, they announced it as if it were brand new, this Humvee with a dish on the back of it that's used for riot control purposes. And the story goes it'll create the heat sensation on the surface of the body of about 130 degrees, which it certainly will do, if it's ranged correctly. If it's ranged for, say, a half a mile and someone walks 20 feet in front of it, they're going to have a much different experience than 130 degrees on the surface of the skin. But you know, in civil societies, we gave up burning people at the stake a long time ago, and now we have, and now we have a technological application that doesn't create the same stench of.
Wow, y'all. This guy's talking about basically remotely being able to just torch people with frequencies.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I mean. It's sort of like they're already there, and they're showing us these dumb robots, which I'm sure have their purpose for surveillance and stuff. But I wouldn't be too.
I'm interested in the mood enhancement because, like, how is that not being employed in every school for performance enhancement, or in every prison to quell a riot, or just to keep the prisoners sleepy all the time?
Yes. What I'm actually interested in along those lines, Everyman, is just recently somebody said that people couldn't remember the Taylor Swift concerts. And I'm just wondering, are they experimenting with this stuff? Because I hadn't heard that. And it's like, why? I don't know any details. Does anyone know much more about that, or just the fact they can't remember it, or what?
Yeah, so fans were, people that spent thousands of dollars to go to this concert would come back reporting not being able to remember it. That was a really weird thing. And just, like we discussed last week, I think it was, about Taylor Swift having an uncanny resemblance to Anton LaVey's daughter. That was pretty weird, but yes. Yeah, I mean, her new music video has a ton of occultic, satanic imagery. I guess same thing if you look at it that way. But yeah, she's doing some sort of spells.
Well, to go back to frequency, one of her LA concerts, there were so many people in the stadium or the place that she was holding her concert, that when they were singing one of the songs, everyone in unison together, it registered as a low-grade earthquake. It was measured on the Richter scale. So frequency is absolutely everything. And I think that's the major point of technology, like you were alluding to in the chat earlier, Stella, that these are antiquated technologies. When you have to use physical devices and actually cut into a human, it's old hack. It's like you're plugging in a plugging in a Nintendo 64 when you've got the new interactive PlayStation 5, something like that. We're using very old technology for this. And what you were just saying about why isn't this being used for good? I think it comes down to technology for us is always given to us in dribs and drabs. At very least, it's just in time. They develop it and then they roll it out. I think that the idea of the benefits of it is, like you said, you could quell a riot at a prison. You could stop people from doing it.
Yeah.
But the negative side effects of this, or the potential weaponization of this, is far scarier. And I would propose that perhaps this is already being used in schools. Is this why we're seeing such a detachment within the education system about children feeling anxious and not feeling the way they are? Because every classroom...
No, it's just because school sucks.
It does, but I've, as a teacher, I see every single classroom has a Wi-Fi booster extender in the classroom. So it's not as simple as you tap into the Wi-Fi at the far end of the school. You're being bathed in it at all times. So what happens when they do want to flip a switch?
But it has the same dramatic, torturing effect. And this is used for not just foreign adversaries. This was funded also for domestic riot control purposes. And what they didn't tell the public is, by changing the waveform, pulse rate, frequency, or any number of parameters, you can have a much, much different effect. You can affect the brain, the heart, the liver, the lungs. You can do many, many things with the very same device, driven by software and the push of a button. And it's a question of the intent of the operator. But you introduce a new piece of hardware, you have to have the story. And the story for the military is, it's just for heating. And I believe it's a lie, because the technology is there, and they would apply that technology, if not experimentally, as they're doing in the war fronts that we're engaged in today, to see what and how far they can go with these technologies.
These same technologies, might this go back even to, say, the days of Royal Rife, when he was using his, quote, energy technologies or frequency technologies to target a particular bacteria or organ in the body and help enhance the health of it? Is this not, perhaps, is this a more sophisticated but potential or version of that, except with negative applications?
Absolutely. You know, energy medicine is where the hope lies. You know, this is where the hope is to move from the chemical models to the electromagnetic models. You know, when you think about, you know, that transition, now you hear a little bit of movement because everybody talks about electrochemical models. You know, it's underlying all of the chemistry. And if you look at how the biological sciences evolved, you know, people that had really good training and talent in mathematics tend to go to the physics side of life. People that couldn't quite get the math but were very brilliant tended to move towards chemistry and the life sciences. And they kind of parted the waters there, which was a serious mistake, because all chemical activity has an underlying energetic on the physics level. You can do things here that then create changes in the chemistry. And this is where the disconnect that I think has been, if you look at the papers that have been published in the last 10 years, you see these things coming together as people understand that the underlying energetic exchanges have an impact on molecules and chemicals that then manifest themselves in health maladies. So consequently, if you think about how Westerners approach medicine, we kind of look from the outside in. You know, we look at the physical body, we might do some blood tests, we might do some imaging, but we don't do much more than that. If you think about Eastern medicine, it starts from an energetic level and works outward. It takes a little longer. You know, things like acupuncture that are quite controversial in the past have been quantified. You know, there's a device that we demonstrate that actually, where you can actually locate the points by measuring skin resistance differentials on the surface of the skin. You find all the acupuncture points.
Well, even HMOs are now supporting payment of acupuncture in some of these.
Because it works.
Right.
And it works profoundly without the chemicals that can damage liver and kidneys and the rest of our physiology.
So it's not, the technology itself certainly is not evil.
No.
It is simply being used in ways that are perhaps not for the highest and best good of all at times. And just to wrap up that element of it, how does one even know if these technologies are being used or if they're being subject to these technologies?
You don't. That's the problem. There's no regulation. There's no way to really tell as an individual. You would just assume it was you. You know.
Are there some signatures in how you would behave or feel or anything like that?
Well, I mean, you'd feel obviously out of character, but again, you know, people go through periods where they do that. You know, you might feel confused. Some people would probably think they were losing mental faculties. You know, that it was you know, themselves. Nobody, very few, would ever suggest that it's something else. Now, We hear from people all the time that assert that military is doing this to them, and most of those folks are having other problems. But I am sure that just based on the fact that our government's history in this area and them being caught a number of times in this area, those experiments go on. And the fact is, if it doesn't happen within the boundaries of the United States, it happens somewhere else, where they feel the Constitution doesn't apply.
So is it a blurry line between experimenting on, you said, 500,000 people over the course of the last few decades, and who might have been involved in the military or something, feeling they had an empirical right because these were employees of sorts or groups that they felt they had an advantage over? Isn't it a fuzzy line to determining who else is going to be subject to it?
Oh, ultimately, when you start looking at all these technologies,
Can we just pause there for a sec? I just
Yep.
wanted to pause while we're still on the chemical sort of arena. I found this really interesting thread that was talking about this stuff, and it sounded like it was written by people who knew what they were talking about. I'll put it in the show notes. This particular comment caught my eye. So they're talking about this kind of exactly this sort of thing, what frequencies do what, etc. A lot of this stuff was based on CRT TVs, the cathode ray diode. What is it? Cathode ray? Yeah. Anyway, that's what a lot of this stuff was based on, but they've moved beyond that technology as well. So they've managed to harness it in with lights and flickers and all that sort of thing. Anyway, this channel says, I'm not even going to try to announce the person's name. From my research, this has very little to do with energy used and more about stimulating the sodium and potassium ion channels in peripheral nerve cells by means of photoelectric effect, especially in the blue and yellow wavelengths. I just thought that was kind of interesting. Does that anyone else find it? It's just sort of like it's a little bit different to the way we're kind of think we are understanding it. You know what I mean? Like
Blue. Telling me
remember
we can
Lahaina?
specifically harass people with high sodium diets.
Yeah, well, Westerners,
and make them feel chronic pain throughout their entire bodies.
It sounds like, I mean, they mentioned Royal Rife, and even back, decades ago, there was a list, which I have somewhere buried in my files, of all the different frequencies that were apparently, for all the different treatments, etc. Now, whatever happened to that technology? I suppose ultrasound is sort of like that, but that's another issue in itself, the safety of ultrasound. So yeah, it sounds sort of like it's more they're really tapping into it's the nervous system and the chemicals. I mean, we are just a walking big chemical bag, aren't we?
And I think what the gentleman just said about it is you don't even know what's happening to you. So if they set a system up where your culture is completely manipulated, your politics is completely manipulated, what's to say mass gatherings and protests that have gone awry haven't been manipulated this way? Because if you go to protest, say, a government choice, like, say, a January 6th, it doesn't necessarily need a instigator to get everyone riled up. What if they just flip a switch, change your emotions to make you angry, and then because you've been brought up in this system of this is my political leaning, this is the way I view things, and you know what, I went to the protest and I got a little bit angry. Well, did you naturally get angry, or did someone trigger that anger in you for you to erupt and do that? So to my mind, this just brings up the Arab Spring, the events around Sri Lanka where huge amounts of the population kind of flipped a lid and went nuts. Was that purely based on disapproval and distrust with their governments or their institutions, or was it triggered and caused to happen?
I, for one, welcome making our guys more angry.
Well, that's a really good
we
point,
probably
Drew.
need that.
And when you were talking about that, I sort of, what came into my mind was, do you remember one of the very first things that was organized via social media was that Egyptian riot? Do you remember back in, I don't know when it was, 2011 maybe? Might have been earlier.
Arab Spring.
Oh, that's what that is, right? Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize that's what it was called.
But Arab Spring is a lot of different.
Right.
Well, right now we've seen that and I don't know where y'all sit on this, because all of us were kind of disbelieving the video from DC this weekend where they had all the Palestinian pro-Palestinian protesters climbing the fence to the White House, things like that. But I mean, what do y'all think? Was there an enormous crowd there? Was it AI generated? Was it manufactured? What do y'all think?
Accelerate. I don't know. I haven't seen what you're talking
about. I don't really know either, being an Aussie and not being in touch with what's going on there. But I just remember they were building that big fence around the White House. I mean, is that because they were expecting this? What?
I've seen a lot of discussion around this because, what's going on with Israel and Palestine at the moment. So lots of people were sharing the images, especially from the right. They were sharing the images of those pro-Palestinian protesters at the White House, and they were questioning, does this count as an insurrection? Why aren't these people being mass arrested? So that is a great question, Ando. Was it a natural thing? Did it actually happen? Was it completely staged? All I know is what I saw on a little black screen. I saw people.
Did they get over the fence?
Yeah, you can't.
Did anyone make it onto the lawn?
I'm not sure on that, but you can't believe your eyes and ears these days, just because deepfake technology is that strong. I mean, hell, this video of this guy could be completely made up by some crazy guy that just wants to lead us down a path, or whatever. However you want to think. Hey, we could be computer generated. We're not, but we could be. For all you know. So use discretion.
Well, Ando, this technology brings up a bigger question of, can you believe with your eyes and ears anymore? Can you believe your eyes and ears in person now? If you see a reaction from a group at a protest, how do you know that's a genuine reaction, not something that's been manipulated for them to do that? We don't know what genuine reactions are now, according to this video and that technology.
Which is exactly where they want us, because that was the whole point. Remember the CIA guy who stood up at some point and said, once the people don't know what to believe, we've done our job, basically paraphrasing. It's part of the target.
Yep.
It's a plain old agent of chaos stuff.
I just found it. William Casey, CIA director. We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false.
Do you know what's really funny about all of this?
They must be done, so we can go
1981.
Home.
The funny thing about all this, Ando, is with this technology, there could conceivably be a real-life gay gun where they point it at you and make you gay.
They could.
Every man's worst.
Yeah. Holy shit.
That might not be as funny as it sounds. I mean, if they can manipulate hormones and, things like that.
Jeez, you're a mighty attractive man there, Ando.
Somebody's going to be like, well, what did I do last night? They must have used the gay gun on me.
Yeah.
They keep using
Teach
the
this
gay
man
gun
some
on
barrel
me.
discipline.
Then you'll be begging for the please make me forget gun.
They always seem to target me when I go into the bathhouse district, and I don't know why. That's where they seem to get me.
So yeah, that senator he has, that's Lindsey Graham. So I was out again last night, and they used that gay gun on me. I know they're just trying to get me. Anyway, let's kick it into some more of this video. Here we go.
Who are the targets? The targets are obviously declared adversaries. But when you think about it, and again, going back to this kind of technology evolving, the temptation of political leaders is to get their views across, to get their issues pushed forward, not because they don't believe in them, quite the contrary. They believe vigorously in them. Would they use technology? I think so. Zbigniew Brzezinski thinks so, and he's said so. The fact is, when you think about the invasiveness of this technology, think about the basic values Americans hold in common. Think about the very First Amendment. Freedom of speech, assembly, religion are all predicated on one idea: freedom to think. The fact that we have technologies that can interfere with that today demands regulation as a fundamental to the American character.
Let's take it a step further. These technologies can also be used in a positive way to enhance our brain's functioning, and let's look at some of the positive applications.
This is the most important, absolutely. And in the fact that the government withholds so much data that could be useful to the life sciences has not stopped advances from being made. A good example is neurobiofeedback, or brain biofeedback, used for treating ADD, attention deficit disorder children, hyperactive kids as well, stroke victims, addictive behaviors. And what they use is an 8 or 16 channel EEG, so they have, it's kind of messy, gooey stuff all over your head. Well, they got new ones now. They're nice little helmets that you can wear. And you look at a computer screen, and in real time you might see, like for a little kid, a bouncing ball or a guy running a foot race. And the idea is to get the guy to win the race. And what they're really doing is training their own brains to fall into that range, that ideal range of learning. And so what happens, in Minneapolis School District they did this with a charter school. And they took all the kids in there, they were all on Ritalin and other psychoactive drugs. They went through 30 to 40 one-hour sessions of this kind of training, put the hardware aside, and they were off. 80% of the kids were off of those drugs. By the end of the first year, integrated back into regular ed programs. You can't say enough about what that did for those children, but think about it from everyone's standpoint. It costs 2 or 3 or 4 times more per year, every year, to educate those kids otherwise in special education programs. If you can avoid that, this is a tremendous step in the right direction, and it's just one. Other areas where this technology has been advanced is light and sound devices. You know, these ideas that create a flickering light that the brain entrains to. And people go, well, how can a little flickering light do that? Do you remember a few years ago in Japan when 700 kids went to the hospital with epileptic seizures from watching a cartoon? Now, it wasn't the energy concentration, because it's quite light. I mean, you put your hand up next to a color television set, you can feel static. You get back just an inch or two and it's gone. Well, 10 feet away, they say it's perfectly safe. It was the flicker rate, the frequency, that window frequency of coherent energy that was sufficient to cause that chemical cascade in those 700 kids that led to epileptic seizures. Now, flickering light has been shown to do many things in terms of entrainment, but you can entrain to levels that get you into those deep states of meditative states. You can entrain for relaxation, for sleep. You can entrain to energize when you're a little bit lethargic, or you can entrain for specific learning applications. And so these technologies are out there. When you think about electromedicine as a concept, electroacupuncture, electrolaser acupuncture has been developed and licensed in Europe, meeting challenges in Finland all the way to the highest court. A good friend of mine, Reiho Michaela, before he passed away, took on that challenge. He treated 16,000 people with a method of electrolaser acupuncture. He was challenged by the medical authorities in Finland all the way to their high courts, and he won. There are 15 trained clinicians there providing this technology and expanding it. These are the things that really offer not the Pandora's box of the military, but the real hope for many, many people. When you think about stroke victims' recovery and being able to get back some of those faculties, I mean, all of us have met people or known people who've lived any length at all that could use this technology, and the fact is, it's not in the mainstream. Only a few school districts, after being around for now 20 years, some of this stuff are integrating it. Some of the medicine that you're seeing now in terms of acupuncture moving into some of these other areas is just now starting to get into the mainstream, although it's been around now for a couple of decades. Takes time. The biggest loss, the biggest criminal element is the idea that all the millions, all the billions that we spend in military research is withheld from the public for the health advantages that might be offered by the understanding of these types of technologies.
In sound technology, you were talking about flickering lights. There are incredible advancements in sound technology, and one that I've had a little bit of exposure to that I think is just fabulous and simple is the HemiSync.
Yeah, HemiSync was developed by Bob Monroe, and it's one of those technologies we were pretty excited about, and we've been excited about for a long time. And what it creates is whole brain coherence, where the whole brain actually resonates to that input signal. And here's the thing about hearing. You know, for using sound, it's a little tough, because to get those low frequency, extremely low frequency signals, you know, we don't hear that low. So what Monroe figured out is that by sending a signal in, say, one ear at, say, 16,000 hertz or vibrations per second, and one in at, say, 16,007, they cancel and leaves a beat frequency of 7 that the brain locks onto, and as it locks onto it, both hemispheres' energy distribution is about even. In other words, if you looked at it, just a normal brain activity, you'd see usually a lot of energy concentrated in one area of the brain on one side and the other kind of dead, or vice versa. And there's this big argument, right brain, left brain, one's creative, one's analytical, and which is more important? They're both important and meant to work together. What HemiSync does is create that entrainment of both hemispheres where they both are working together, and then they have specific CDs that are designed to affect different things. So whether it's behavior modification, they use in some cases just straight tones. Other cases they use tones with suggestion. The difference is their suggestions are audible. You can hear them all. They're not like subliminals, which can be quite dangerous. And the reason subliminals can be dangerous is word symbols are very, very powerful. If I say dog, for instance, some people feel real good about it. Others get gripped with fear because of experiences they've had with animals. So when you listen to subliminals and you don't know what's being said, remember these are bypassing the conscious. So if they conflict with your value system, conflicts in value systems at the subconscious level is the root of many forms of psychosis. So you want to know what's being put in. So hemisync I like because if they use words, and in some they do, you know exactly what words are going to be used. They line up with your value systems or you don't use them.
And then the one I'm particularly fond of that I use to sit down and write a script and do my research through my iPod little headset is one that has no words in it and you don't really hear the tone. It's more just sounds like really pretty music.
Right.
Very pleasant music, except you feel incredibly uplifted and optimistic.
Right.
And your brain is incredibly focused.
Yeah, and these are exactly what they're designed to do. I mean, there's several designed for concentration for those kinds of applications. There's some designed for memory, relaxation, getting rid of bad habits, losing weight, increasing sex drive. I mean, it goes on and on and on. They have lots of material out there. And they're cheap. I mean, that's the beauty of it. It's not like you got to invest hundreds and hundreds of dollars. These are things that cost $20. And a CD lasts as long as the CD lasts, and there you are. You have something that you can apply to your specific need as an individual making the choice, not having it imposed upon you, and then utilize it to enhance your own performance. And in a technological age, we need more of that. And the nice thing about it is the more you use these technologies, the brain lays down its own pathways. And so your tendency is, on a more frequent basis, you do it naturally. You know, with little kids, you see a lot more balance. As we bring them into so-called education, we see this shift where we treat little girls one way and little boys another way, and as a consequence, one brain gets developed, one side of the brain versus the other. Today, a little less of that because we kind of mess them up equally nowadays. But the point is, by the end of high school, there's very little brain coherence with both hemispheres working together. Very rarely do you see that. And this is something that we need more of, things that could be easily integrated into public education, but could most certainly be integrated privately. The thing about public education that's extremely important is as technologies evolve, the way this is headed in the direction in which military sees it going is you'll be actually able to transfer full memory sets. They believe they're going to be able to model the brain in the next 10 to 15 years, where if you want to learn a language, instead of spending years doing it, you could download that language and have it in a few hours.
Well, okay, that's crazy and awesome, and I thought that this was about to get really boring, but I did want to cut it right there just for a moment.
That's pretty much it anyway, Ando.
Oh yeah, they don't have anything more. It looks like there's a couple more minutes left. Maybe
that's the guts.
3
That's
more
the guts
minutes.
of it.
That's the guts. Okay. Yeah. This is being able to program people from a distance and input languages, things like that. That's pretty interesting territory that we're in, and this is obviously going to be used as a weapon and for nefarious purposes. Anybody disagree with that?
Didn't China already use it on India? Didn't they hit him with a microwave direct energy weapon and like took some hail or something like that?
I think so. Something similar. In the Kashmir region?
Yeah, this was like 2017, 2018. Something like that. There was some weird rules of engagement going on where they couldn't use they couldn't use weapons. So they would just like meet and fist fight each other, two like armies.
Yeah, and they beat each other.
Sounded awesome. Yes, yeah, it sounds awesome, honestly. That's super funny. I would love to see that. You know, I'd love to participate. It doesn't sound like anyone was dying. They were just beating the crap out of each other.
Well, the technology that Havana syndrome was sort of blamed on, it's a LIDAR, LIDA, which was sort of uncovered in Vietnam sort of days, Vietnam era, which was a Russian device. The Russians cop the blame again. And they used to use that to put the prisoners of wars into translate states. So yeah, exactly what we were talking about, just being able to crowd control, basically. manipulate, which makes me kind of wonder. I mean, why aren't they just doing that now? I'm glad they're not. But I mean, they are. But do you know what I mean? Like, they could have just got everybody to go and get vaccinated, just by whacking out a few frequencies by the sound of it.
Or maybe it wasn't so much about the vaccine, it was fleshing out who the people would be that would go against it. And that was routing out the people who would have dissent and not follow the plan.
I think they had a few more experiments to do.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting that we're coming back to the idea of sound or low sound or infrasound being a weapon of war, because sound is being used as a weapon of war since the Roman Empire period when they fought the Celts, like the Carynx, which was a trumpet that was on the end of a pole. When they gallop on the horses, it would build this wailing sound, and it was supposed to instill fear in even the most hardened Roman soldiers. Now, was that just fear of a weird sound, or did it have a real guttural frequency instilling force behind it? And we see in theories that how you build using sound, you can levitate rocks and things with sound. Like, are we just coming back to all the old ancient technologies that everyone knew of, and it's been squirreled away in these occult types of elites around the world, and we're just starting to see the ripple effect and echo of it come back now?
That's a really great point, but I think probably going at the speed of horseback with wind basically whistling through some apparatus, I would venture to think there wouldn't have been enough energy for a frequency to actually have a biological effect on anyone. But I think it's probably instilled by their belief system of, I don't know, spirits, greater powers, what have you. Maybe these people had special powers. That's because they sound like they do, that kind of thing, because that's where they were at that point, That's my guess, scary. My very unscientific mind guess.
Right, I think it's just scary to see something coming at you and it doesn't sound like you'd expect it to, and it's some sound you've never heard,
They were also blue and naked too, so there's that as well.
Yeah, well, some of them might have been more scary than others, but there's also that frequency of fear. So who knows? Maybe they tapped into that frequency of fear as well. But like you said, Dan, sorry to interrupt you. Like you said, it does sound scary. I mean, that would sound really scary. I can imagine it'd be like, woo, so coming towards you,
I was literally thinking the Scooby-Doo alien noise that they would use in every encounter with an alien. It's like that. Also just unfitting music. I used to play Ark Survival Evolved, and so we used to go down by the beach and just club noobs out. And I remember I was in I was teamed up with some guy, and this dude is nuts. He was butt naked with a club, and he would just club out noobs while blasting "Call Me Maybe" over his speaker. And that's terrifying. Imagine some naked guys running at you with a club and blasting pop music as loud as it can come through your speakers, and it's just coming at you. I mean, that's terrifying,
It's interesting that you brought up the Book of Jasher there, Ando. The 12 tribes that could scream down their enemies. We see that being adapted into the book series Dune, where they use the voice or the sound as a weapon. So they've got this super advanced technology spaceships, but the greatest weapon ends up being sound that someone could make with their mouth.
Yeah, I think of the Native Americans as well. I mean, they were pretty famous for their war cries, weren't they? Just intimidation.
Right, and so there's bagpipes as well. There's you were talking about how the wall was brought down Jericho. Let's see, there's plenty of historical examples of this, but what I was talking about that Drew was just saying is in the book of Yasher that Levi could scream down his enemies in battle, and they had. I mean, in the book of Yasher, these guys had basically superpowers. I wanted to get one of y'all. Who was it that said this? I believe it was Dan. You were talking about. No, it was Drew. About the light and frequency and everything. That is the powers of Lucifer.
Yeah. So it's something that I've seen come up a little bit now, is that people always remember Lucifer as the light bringer and God's most favorite angel because he's so bright and beautiful, but he was also a musician as well. And we know that music has the ability to make us feel happy, makes us feel sad. It elicits emotions in us. And we're hearing a lot about frequencies with this here. So is that the basis for like mind control and manipulation through music? We know that there's a gigahertz frequency. There was a change in music. We went from one to the other. Stella, you'd be able to talk to this better than I can. But manipulation on a spiritual war level coming through music, which is coming from the greatest musician arguably ever known, which was Lucifer.
So Rob's parasite theory, and that parasite and snake basically mean the same thing in ancient Hebrew, that it's just a wiggly thing, right? And so y'all were talking about like could they just get us to comply based off of using these frequencies and everything like that? I still think that everybody just needs to have that operating system, and that operating system that they're utilizing could be parasites, and that's probably what they're doing here, is making people more susceptible to being controlled. And so they inject themselves with graphene and parasites and whatever the hell else. I mean, I've heard some even more schizo stuff that could be in these things, that people were finding things that you've heard the whole Hydra thing, I'm sure. I mean, it's a theory, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know well enough to tell you that they did or didn't put these in people, but you can use the light and frequencies to get, these lower life forms to do things. So there we are.
Yeah, and I believe it was the Pfizer vaccine, the RNA, luciferase. Yeah, it had luciferase in it, which is like a light. I don't know exactly how to say it, but it's to do with light. They basically sort of got it out of things like, those glowy things under the ocean, those glowy creatures and things.
Luminescent type of creatures, yeah.
Yeah, it's a chemical, some sort of chemical that it's just maybe a phosphate sort of base. I'm not really sure, but that was included. And I'm just wondering, if they're using things like light to, as they say, pulsing light, etc., to control things, then why can't they use frequencies to control the light within the nanoparticles? Sorry, I'm a bit unscientific, but you know what I mean.
Well, light and sound all exist in waves that generally aren't visible to the human eye at certain spectrums, so it makes sense.
Sort of, interacting with whatever those particles were that got injected.
So I just wrote it in the chat, but does anybody have anything else they wanted to add to this forum before we, as Mike puts it, wrap her up?
I just wanted to say that the gay gun was actually just a horny gun, but they only tested it on feds.
ATF.
Yes,
please, guys, leave some cum for the rest of us. You're just swallowing it all.
I did a little bit of looking into that name, Hendrikus G. Luce, which was the fellow, or the name that was put to a lot of these patents, or a number of these patents, going back to 60s and 70s.
Elaborate, because this is something from the chats. Inform the audience.
Yeah. Okay, so what we were talking about last week, I actually had it to talk about, but we didn't get there. We ran out of time. So a lot of these patents that with the technology that we've been talking about now were accompanied under the name of, often not alone, of Hendrikus G. Luce, L-O-O-S. And I just looked in. I'd never heard of any of this, but I just looked into it to find out who these people were that were writing these patents. And apparently it's a bit of a thing, a bit of a, I suppose, debate that it's possible that may have been a fake name made up to sort of like a cover for CIA black projects, etc. But then on the other hand, and you can't verify any of this, but on the other hand, it looks like if it was fake, somebody set it up to look like there was a real person. So there's daughters' names, and I've even got addresses and phone numbers, actually. But I'm not going to call them. Maybe we could call them.
Stella has names and addresses. Look out.
My little black book. But originally I just sort of went off on my own little anagram search, etc., and just for fun, as I do. Hendrikus is an anagram of something called Renkitis, I'm sure it is, who happened to be a bishop in around about 800 AD. That didn't really go anywhere much because there's not much information on that bishop. So Hendrikus, it is also the name Hendrikus G. Luce, and I find it interesting that G is the middle name, middle initial too, but who knows, there may not be a connection with Freemasonry there. Lucifer, who knows, this is my imagination. It also happens to be an anagram of Source Holdings, which was not my information, that was something that I read. Source Holdings, and I looked into Source Holdings. I think that's a whole other rabbit hole. I just didn't have time to go searching down there. But I'm sure, if there's anything worth knowing, it's not going to be readily available. So it was a little bit hard to detect. There was another. So this name is Hendrikus G. Luce, but there happens to be a Henricus Luce, Loos, which was also a bishop, which I thought was interesting. The 15th Bishop of Utrecht in the Netherlands, 1858, was one of only 2 orders recognised by the Roman Catholic Church. Probably got nothing to do with it. I just thought it was kind of interesting that there was 2 bishops there. So, is this a code for chess? Bishop 2 to, something? I don't know.
Chessboard,
I've got a good imagination.
You got it there. You got to go back to the G.
So it's a little bit inconclusive about whether this was actually a real person or not. If it was, it's probably set up to look like a real person. But all similar technologies. And if he was alive today, this Hendrikus G. Luce, he would be 98.
Well, you either have to set yourself up with a pseudonym, Stella, or you end up falling down the stairs and falling onto 2 bullets that go directly into your head. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah, kill yourself in the back of the head.
Did you run it through an anagram? Did you find anything interesting out of that?
Yeah, I did. Well, that was the Renkitis. So Hendrikus became Renkitis, which was one of the bishops. And the other anagram that I read that somebody else had done was the Source Holdings, which is a company. And it's a company that is to do with... Where is it? I might have closed it because it was sort of a little bit irrelevant. Hang on. No, I've got it here. Bloomberg. It's on the Bloomberg site, whatever that means. I'm not really familiar with what that is, but there was not a lot of information about that holding company, Source Holdings Limited. So I don't know what that meant. Interesting anagram, though.
Well, I think we came up with some cool stuff tonight, and so since we started on tradition and everything, Thanksgiving's fast approaching, and just to be a little sap here and say I'm really grateful for y'all because I couldn't have done this without yous, and really grateful for Mike that makes things happen all the time, so I don't have to fumble it. But I think it turned out great, and I really appreciate all of y'all for joining in. Back again to mention Rose and Rachel Underground Cotillion. Y'all need to check that out, and there will be links in the show notes so you can join and sign up and everything like that. The Drizzle and Phytophiliac, who were here before, and let's go around the circle. Start with Everyman.
I don't really have anything else to add. I mean, it's been really cool just listening to everybody, but just follow me on Twitter, dude. That's really where I hang out a lot. I have a Telegram, but nobody's on there. But yeah, just follow me on Twitter and get the hyperbole.
Stella.
Union of the Unknowns. Shout out to my friend Ashley, who couldn't make it tonight, or our friend, I should say, our beautiful Ashley. We did miss you, because I'm sure she would have had some great input tonight, but she'll be back. And I come from the land of Oz, where the turkeys are never nervous because we don't have Thanksgiving here, so lucky turkeys. Union of the Unknowns, and occasionally the Propaganda Report with Brad Binkley. Dan.
I have, as usual, nothing to plug. I'm just a friend. I will see you guys around.
Thanks, Dan. Stella, there is one territory within Australia that does actually celebrate Thanksgiving, and that is Norfolk Island, due to the American whalers who went to that part of the world. So they celebrate it today. Small little factoid for everyone. Beyond that, I'm Drew Misson from Your Missing the Point podcast. You can also find me on Conspiracy Theatre 3000 and The Homeroom Educating Educators. So entertainment podcast and a educational podcast. Yeah.
And may I say also, Ando, thank you for your, it was a little bit of a techie, stressy thing to start off with. We had a few teething problems because Uncle Mike wasn't here, but it's all good. We sorted it out.
It's
thanks
hard
to
doing
every
this on
man.
Wi-Fi. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks to every man for coming in and saving the transmission day there. And thanks, Ando, for doing the hosting and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And everyone,
no
watch
problem.
out for those gay guns.
Yes. So what I was going to mention before we go is I've been pondering up a new forum kind of show, but it's going to be more political, and it will be with my friends here, Everyman and Dan, and it's going to be another panel show. So you might see some familiar faces and some unfamiliar faces. It's called The Helicopter View, and that's coming really soon on the same feed as all my other shows. Burn Babylon Burn is the feed. The Doom Kitchen is my interview show, and you can find me libertylinks.io/the Doom Kitchen, and you can email me at thedoomkitchen@protonmail.com. But if you're going to search me up in one of your handy dandy podcatchers, look for Burn Babylon Burn. And I should be playing music here as we close it out, probably. But I'm not being as good as I should be. Here we go. All right, we're gonna start the little what the fucky music and get the hell out of here. Love y'all.
Love you guys.
Thanks for jamming with me, and yeah, sorry for the crappy Wi-Fi.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, mate.
Great to see all you guys.